The girl recalls how the gas was recently cut off, and today the electricity. At night, she wanders the city, feeling despair and hopelessness. Having met an acquaintance, she asks him not to bother her. She has almost no money left, only 20,000 won, which she needs to stretch out for 2 weeks. The man demands her money, even threatening her, but the girl convinces him she has no money to pay. He tries to restrain her roughly. The girl fights back in panic, overcome with fear. She feels that if she gives him her last money, she'll be left without food tomorrow. Losing her balance, she falls. At that moment, a question flashes through her mind. Will her life really end so foolishly because of debt? Her life was full of suffering. An alcoholic father, a poor family. Her mother left, leaving her alone with a cruel reality. The girl recalls how she managed to escape from her father's clutches, but his debts and problems continued to follow her like a fatal connection. She saved money and worked to study, but her father took all her savings. Her efforts were ruined time and time again. Everything she'd worked so hard to earn vanished like sand through her fingers. The family she'd never chosen became the cause of her misery. She realizes she's never had any support or happiness. Her only desire is to find peace free from pain and loneliness. The night sky echoes with a wish for a peaceful life. Fate promises that in the east, the seeds that will save the world are sown. The girl hears her name called. Mabel, waking up. She notices curious faces all around her and begins to comprehend her new reality. Those present comment on how the baby has noticeably changed in just a few days. Gratitude for her health is expressed with smiles. Mabel realizes she has been reborn. She is surrounded by care, but she wonders if she can hear the voices of her new parents. Looking at the majestic palace, Mabel wonders if her terrible past will repeat itself despite the gentleness and kindness of those around her. She's shocked. She really is a princess. This luxury and the golden spoon in her hands give her hope for a better life. The servants are caring for the baby. Mabel realizes the vast difference between her former life and the one she's now immersed in. The girl realizes that her new life is connected with the great empire of Ermino, and she is one of the emperor's children. Her father, Esteban, holding her in his arms, demonstrates his greatness and love, which fills the girl's new world with warmth. Mabel embraces her new name and status. She decides not to reject her destiny, but to embrace it with hope and courage. A little girl with pink hair, Mabel reveals that her mother died shortly after she was born. This event marked the tragic beginning of her story. Mabel reflects on how fathers often turn their backs on their children if they've caused the loss of their wives. She wonders how Emperor Esteban will react. She hopes he'll ignore her, believing that's the best option. However, through her sleep, Mabel hears a soft, friendly voice. They gently lull her to sleep, promising that everything will be all right. Mabel isn't sure whether it was a vision or reality, but she feels warmth and care. She's having a hard time adjusting to being a baby, constantly feeling sleepy. Mabel reflects on her new, unusual life. During his visit, Esteban enters the chambers. The nurse greets him with surprise and respect, and he gestures for her to remain silent. The emperor gently touches Mabel's face. She wakes up and feels a slight tickle from his touch, trying to figure out who is standing before her. Esteban, looking stern but interested, notices that Mabel has finally opened her eyes. She is surprised to see him for the first time. He jokingly asks if the girl seems to be looking right at him. Her blue eyes study the unfamiliar face with curiosity. The nanny remarks that Mabel seems to recognize her father, as she had been crying just recently. This remark sends Mabel into a state of internal shock. Mabel looks at Esteban in surprise, realizing he is her father. The emperor, pleased, confirms this, bringing warmth and joy to their first meeting. Mabel is shocked to discover that it is her father, not her brother, standing before her. Esteban touches her, gently, trying to connect with his daughter. Looking at her intently, Esteban calls Mabel a smart girl for recognizing him. A tender bond develops between them. Esteban, tenderly touching Mabel, speaks of her mother, Shiana. His words are filled with sadness, but he expresses love and concern for his daughter. The emperor promises Mabel that he will protect her at any cost, adding that she is now the most important thing in his life. When Mabel accidentally grabs his ornament, she sheepishly apologizes. Esteban explains that children reflexively grab everything around them. Mabel, remembering her past life, is sad that she does not want to experience the love of her family, fearing betrayal. Memories of her past life intensify her pain. She sees her parents kissing her like a jewel, but later, everything changed. She remembers the moment when her happy family fell apart. The fear of losing love, once again, fills her heart with a heavy burden. Mabel decides she no longer needs love or affection. She chooses to be strong, protecting her heart from pain. A girl looks out the window with a pensive expression. Her thoughts are focused on the quiet life she dreams of, but everything is changing. The map of the continent shows three powerful countries: the Hermano Empire, the hostile Devlin Empire, and the Holy Kingdom of Abelardo. The Hermano Empire is the largest in terms of territory. The Devlin Empire is the second largest, and between them lies the religious Holy Kingdom. The Holy Kingdom of Abelardo is described as a place where there are no unbelievers, and the inhabitants completely follow the will of God Hades. On Mabel's birthday, an oracle appeared and proclaimed that a seed destined to save the world had been born in the east. On the same day, thunder and lightning struck the castle of the Hermano Empire, which became a significant event for the entire continent. After the incident, it becomes clear that Mabel's baby is the prophetic seed. It is decided to send her to the Holy Kingdom. The people who have taken responsibility for Mabel's fate send letters to Esteban daily, trying to stay in touch with him. Esteban, the young emperor, Hermano, receives one of these letters. He appears upset, clearly under pressure. An irritated messenger bursts into the emperor's presence, sparking a storm of emotions. Esteban clenches his fist, realizing the gravity of the situation. Esteban, sitting in the throne room, furiously condemns Abelardo, clenching his fists. His gaze is full of anger and determination to confront injustice. Memories of the first Prince Oscar trouble Esteban. He realizes that the throne is out of his reach because of this rival. Mabel's soft face, tucked into a blanket, fills Esteban's heart with warmth. He considers her his most precious treasure. The thought of being separated from Mabel pains Esteban. He firmly declares that he will not give up his daughter to anyone, no matter how much the circumstances demand it. His answer is categorical. He rejects an offer that could deprive him of Mabel anger, and confidence are evident in his voice. The advisor is worried he doesn't know how long he can ignore the external pressure. The situation is becoming increasingly tense. Oscar ponders ways to resist the demands. He realizes he needs a trick to distract them from his family. The sudden encounter with dishes and strawberries causes a stir. Guilt and regret are visible on Oscar's face as he looks at the mess. Esteban notices Oscar. The boy, despite his shyness, prepares to engage in conversation. Recognizing the importance of the moment, Oscar, gently greeting Esteban, is portrayed in a touching light. His determination and humility enhance the warmth of the scene. Oscar enters Esteban's office, tension filling the air. Esteban asks him quietly why he's here, emphasizing the formality of the moment. Oscar timidly asks to see Mabel, his expression filled with sincere longing. He's filled with childish hope, but he's met with a cold refusal. Esteban responds sternly to his arguments, expressing confidence in his decision. Oscar tries to object, his emotions running high, but his father remains adamant. Oscar insists that Esteban had previously promised to let him see Mabel in a month. However, his father calmly points out the reason, explaining his position. Esteban argues that Oscar is too impatient and could accidentally cause harm. He brings up past mistakes, causing the boy embarrassment. In response to Oscar's despair, Esteban firmly asserts that his refusal is justified. The boy is outraged and tries to convince his father of his responsibility. Esteban reports that this is also impossible today. Oscar, upset and disappointed, admits that he prepared for this day, even not sleeping last night. He tried to finish classes early to see Mabel, but now he realizes his efforts are in vain. Esteban sighs, understanding his feelings. Despite his refusal, Esteban tenderly places his hand on his son's head and asks him to follow him. This gesture demonstrates his concern, despite his stern words. Meanwhile, Mabel, still a baby, lies in her crib. Her thoughts are filled with boredom, and she reflects that being a child isn't as easy as adults think. Little Mabel, lying helplessly in her crib, reflects on her limitations, feeling uncomfortable because she cannot even roll over. Despite her efforts to stay awake, fatigue takes over, and Mabel struggles to keep her eyes open as she drifts off to sleep under the comfort of her blankets. The servants are concerned about Mabel, noting her constant desire to sleep, although they would like her to have some food before bed. Emperor Esteban appears with First Prince Oscar, puzzled that Mabel is asleep again, and Oscar looks at her curiously. Mabel suddenly hears Esteban's voice, which brings her out of her sleep, causing mixed feelings. She is most worried about the Emperor. Esteban admires little Mabel, calling her cute, though she frowns displeased by his unexpected appearance. Oscar, seeing his sister for the first time, freezes in surprise, experiencing a new interest and a desire to get to know her better. The servants explain that Mabel's vision is not yet fully developed, and she is likely not looking at Oscar, which causes him mixed emotions. Oscar doesn't hear the explanation, happy that Mabel seems to be paying attention to him and admires her cuteness. Mabel, feeling tired and irritated by the attention, mentally asks everyone to leave so she can enjoy her peace and quiet again. Mabel Toothless tried to express her desire, but only managed to moan. Her thoughtfulness surprised Oscar, who was already expecting the first word. Hearing the word Opa uttered, Oscar rejoiced, certain it was addressed to him. But his joy was interrupted by doubt, and the cry, "No way!" Esteban assumed Mabel meant Appa, Daddy, which only further confused Oscar. He was certain Mabel wasn't talking to him. The nanny, tired of their arguments, silently prayed for peace. Her expression of despair became a signal that the situation needed to be taken under control. Mabel, it turned out, was simply trying to convey that she was hungry. The nanny quickly began preparing the mixture, and the prince continued to be amazed. Sitting in the nanny's arms, Mabel watched Oscar with disbelief. He clearly intended to stay and watch her feed. Mabel suddenly noticed a resemblance to her father, which left her even more amazed. She looked at Oscar, pondering his personality. Oscar was surprised to realize that Mabel was looking at him specifically. He sensed a special attention from the baby. The nanny decided to resort to drastic measures. Under the watchful eyes of Esteban and Oscar, Mabel finally began feeding. Mabel tried to speed things up to avoid attention. Her concentration was endearing, despite her hidden displeasure. Mabel stares thoughtfully at the bottle of milk. Her breathing becomes heavy, and she thinks it has something to do with her baby body. Esteban reaches out to take the bottle. Mabel is taken aback by his confident and commanding tone, but is forced to comply. Esteban smiles softly and promises to feed Mabel himself. She is surprised by his kindness, but wary of this sudden decision. Seeing Esteban's smile, Mabel is shocked by his words. Her childish reaction is full of emotion and a reluctance to accept help. Mabel categorically refuses to feed and loudly protests. Esteban, despite her protests, remains confident and calm. Esteban continues to feed Mabel, though she's not thrilled about the situation. The awkwardness of the moment leaves her deeply irritated. Despite his protests, Mabel gradually gives in and eats. Her irritation mingles with surprise at Esteban's persistence. Esteban praises Mabel for eating everything. His gaze remains calm, but to her it seems challenging. Mabel is relieved to finish her meal, but remains dissatisfied. Esteban notes her success with a slight smile. The servants worry about Esteban's condition, but he reassures them that all is well. The tension eases, but Mabel still feels vulnerable. Emperor Esteban holds Mabel in his arms and assures her that the milk she regurgitates is holy water, filling the scene with a strange pathos. Mabel, stunned by Esteban's words, looks at him with incomprehension, and he is glad that the girl eats with appetite despite her bewilderment. Mabel ponders what Esteban said and tries to comprehend whether he really believes ordinary milk to be holy water, which seems absurd to her. The girl continues to be surprised by the emperor's strange antics, wondering if others around her really think his behavior is normal as well. The servants, watching what is happening, smile and create a warm and joyful atmosphere, around which causes Mabel even more bewilderment. Oscar, watching Mabel, experiences a strange feeling and decides to intervene, assuming that he too notices his father's unusual behavior. Oscar cautiously asks permission to hold Mabel, but does not find the right moment, remaining embarrassed in front of the emperor. Esteban reluctantly accepts that no one else can care for Mabel the way he does, holding her with enviable confidence. The emperor reflects on how much he is attached to Mabel, putting her first and rejecting the opportunity to share her attention with anyone else. Esteban, looking at his daughter, declares that her existence has convinced him of the absence of God, accompanying his words with a beaming smile. Esteban, beaming and energetic, bursts into Mabel's room unexpectedly. She sadly reflects that she had prayed for a different future, one less overbearing. Mabel lies in bed, wondering why she has to endure so much fuss. Even Prince Oscar comes unannounced. Her gaze falls on the hanging chandelier. She's distracted, admiring the structure, but protests when she realizes her attention is interfering with her concentration. Elsewhere, Esteban nearly breaks a family heirloom, causing panic among the servants, but his clumsy stunt only highlights his eccentricities. The people around are discussing the news. A divine beast egg has been found in the forest. Mabel, perplexed, wonders if this is really possible. They say the beast resembles a cat with golden fur. She doubts it, dismissing it as rumor, but can't help but wonder. Listening to Larima and Xavier argue, she decides to use the moment to practice focusing on achieving her small goals. Gradually, she develops her fingers and learns to hold toys. This small victory fills her with confidence and pride. She decides to make the training more challenging by trying to roll over on her own. It requires a tremendous amount of effort, but she doesn't give up. Every step of her progress feels like a miracle. She understands that even small victories hold immense meaning and joy. Mabel decides to learn to lift her head, but her first attempt ends in failure. She makes disgruntled sounds, expressing her disappointment. Trying hard, she strains with all her might, but fails again. Her face expresses weariness and frustration, making her wonder when she'll grow up. Frustrated, she realizes that she can't even get up and gets angry, unable to do anything, even kick the blanket. Oscar peeks into her room, seeing that she's awake. His cheerful face lights up with a smile as he says he noticed she's awake. Oscar runs up to Mabel's cradle, his eyes shining with happiness, and he says her name with genuine joy, as if meeting her fills his day with light. Oscar reaches for Mabel, but the maid stops him, reminding him of the need to maintain cleanliness. She is clearly concerned for the princess's health. Oscar is embarrassed, realizing his hands are dirty. He promises to wash and change his clothes so as not to upset anyone and to stay close. As she leaves, the maid wonders how the king will react to what has happened. She assumes he is likely already aware of it. Mabel, despite her fatigue, makes another attempt to lift her head, but her efforts end in failure, and she feels even weaker. Seeing Mabel sweating, the maid calls for help, thinking it's a cold. However, the girl realizes it's just from overexertion on her small body. The room was filled with anxiety. Mabel, lying in bed, had attracted attention due to her apparent illness. The servants were scurrying about, worried about her condition. Oscar, the first prince, was confused by the noise, and soon learned that a doctor had been called. He was worried and couldn't hide his confusion. Upon hearing the news that Mabel was supposedly ill, Oscar rushed to her with alarm, wanting to check on her condition. He ran awkwardly to Mabel, begging her not to get sick. The girl, half asleep, barely understood what was happening. The nanny, with a worried expression, tried to convince Oscar that Mabel's weak voice indicated a serious illness. The girl mentally protested. Hiding her irritation, Mabel decided to let others think what they wanted, hoping for a quick resolution to the situation. Esteban, the emperor, walked to Mabel's chambers with a worried expression. The servants begged him to wait for the doctor, but he was in a hurry to see the girl. Mabel, overcome with embarrassment, wondered when she would finally be understood. She was irritated by the excessive panic of those around her. Esteban burst into the room, overcome with worry for Mabel. His concern was reflected in his every movement. When the doctor arrived, Mabel breathed a sigh of relief, determined to prove to everyone that she was healthy and put an end to the chaos. Mabel slowly comes to opening her eyes, her gaze confused between sleep and reality. She feels weak and confused. Esteban, leaning over Mabel, shows concern and orders a doctor to be found. His eyes reflect concern for her well-being. The physician explains that Mabel's condition is stable and her weakness is merely due to exhaustion. He assures the emperor that there is no threat. Mabel is surprised by the words about exhaustion, but quickly realizes that her condition could have been caused by magic that manifested in the midst of training. Esteban, somewhat reassured by the explanation, continues to observe Mabel's condition. She feels a slight warmth inside, seeing his concern. The servants and attendants also show concern and thank the heavens that Mabel is well. She notices the sincerity of their joy. In Esteban's arms, Mabel realizes how unusually comfortable she feels around him. His warmth seems strange but pleasant. Memories take us back to a meeting where they discussed the captured enemy, one of the Empire's greatest threats. Esteban remains focused. Diablo Devlin, a captured enemy, poses a serious threat. Esteban ponders what's happening, realizing the situation demands immediate action. Rumors circulate in Devlin about the monster's ruthlessness and cruelty. It is called a devil, leaving destruction in its wake. The army reports that Devlin recently attacked their territory, causing bloodshed. This has provided an opportunity to finally capture the mysterious enemy. The prisoner comes as a shock. He turns out to be a child. This news is staggering, forcing one to wonder what lies behind the image of the devil. Soldiers report that a child crossed the border, fleeing something he was captured, but the reasons for his escape remain a mystery. In the courtroom, officers discuss the strange situation. Emperor Esteban orders increased security and the child's interrogation. Amidst serious questions, news of Mabel's illness arrives. Esteban is alarmed and immediately heads to her, abandoning everything else. Concerned courtiers discuss Princess Mabel, whose birth has caused a stir. Her features resemble those of the late empress. People recall that Mabel inherited the emperor's blue eyes and blonde hair. This connection draws particular attention to the palace. Concern for the princess's health is growing among the servants. The loss of the empress has deepened their devotion to the child who has become the center of their care. Amid the sounds of heartbreak, emotions boil in the palace. The fates of the princess and the mysterious child are united in an atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. Emperor Esteban, once known as the Bloody, has returned to the past to change his destiny. His determination to change his fate is unwavering. Mabel, the Empire's only hope, has drawn attention due to her weakness. The servants are concerned about her condition and are worried about her health. Her peaceful sleep is seen as a sign of hope, and the praying servants ask that she grow up healthy and keep the eternal flame of the Empire burning. Passions are constantly running high in the palace. Mabel is surrounded by care and attention, but she finds it too tiring and inconvenient. Oscar is concerned about Mabel's comfort, instructing the servants. He sincerely tries to make her life in this complex palace more pleasant. The bustle around Mabel continues, surrounded by care and worries. She senses everyone's anxiety, but remains calm. Mabel has a hard time adjusting to the inconveniences, but she's trying to adapt. Despite the care, she doesn't like her surroundings. Her first walk is a turning point. She appreciates the stroller and the adults' efforts, but she wishes she had more peace and quiet. The walk reveals to her the grandeur of the imperial palace. She is amazed by its scale and beauty, studying everything with interest. Mabel sums up the day. The palace is truly impressive, and the walk was fascinating, although she would have liked more privacy. The servants smile as they remark on how sunny and pleasant it is outside. Mabel, her eyes shining, finds herself the center of attention, delighted by the warmth and beauty of nature. As her carriage emerges into the street, Mabel feels a sharp chill. The servants try to warm her, surprised by how quickly the weather has changed. Oscar, concerned, notes that Mabel might be freezing. He suggests doing something to help her, showing his concern. Little Mabel, tucked away in her carriage, watches the scene unfold through the lace curtains. Everything around her seems mysterious and new. Esteban suddenly appears on the street. He surprises everyone, including Mabel, who warily questions his unexpected visit. Esteban picks Mabel up gently, lifting her. She looks slightly surprised, but his care brings her comfort in the cold weather. Esteban notices that Mabel is dressed in expensive magical fabric, which elicits admiration from the servants. They discuss how valuable this gift was. The carriage stops at the northern forest. The servants set up a cozy picnic spot, inviting Mabel to enjoy nature and peace away from the palace. Mabel sits, enjoying the peace and warmth of the care of her servants and friends. The bright rays of the sun and the surrounding nature fill her with joy. The final scene shows how much everyone cares for Mabel. Her smile reflects the joy this walk brings her. A little girl, Mabel looks thoughtfully at the sky, marveling at its endless blue, seeing such a vibrant shade for the first time. She recalls her past, where the sky was dark and gloomy and stars were rare. The past seems so distant to her. Mabel sits in the stroller, feeling tired not from sleep, but from strong emotions. Oscar holds her carefully. Oscar tenderly reassures Mabel that she can rest easy. His kind eyes radiate warmth and concern, which calms her. Oscar, along with the maid, keeps an eye on Mabel to make sure she's not cold. She wonders why he's so attached to her. In the hallway, Oscar energetically announces that he has finished his business to spend time with Mabel, deciding to postpone training. He explains to the maid that he wants to be close to Mabel, as this is her first trip outside. His face lights up with joy. Mabel reflects on how she never considered the Emperor's family to be her true family. She feels like an outsider in this world. She reflects on her birth into this family and doesn't know how to behave with its members. However, she doesn't blame them for her feelings. Meanwhile, another character watching Oscar and Mabel admires their tenderness, but encounters an unexpected comic moment. Mabel, in a clearing with others, notices an unusual light. People begin to wonder what's happened. Mabel, realizing that a divine being is standing before her, feels surprise and excitement, and looks at him in fascination. A mythical beast appears before Mabel, a golden, shining creature surrounded by flowers, causing delight and admiration among everyone present. Mabel realizes that this is not just any animal, but a legendary mythical beast she has heard about, and she is eager to learn more. She reflects on the fact that she has never encountered such creatures in her past, and she is overcome with curiosity about what it looks like up close. Oscar and the others suggest going to see the mythical creature up close, eagerly gathering together for this amazing spectacle. Mabel, upset, is afraid of being left behind and worries that the others will go without her, while she is unable to go. Oscar scoops Mabel up in his arms, offering to take her with him. She's delighted and smiles, relying on his support. Mabel, full of enthusiasm, exclaims that she also wants to be a part of this event, expressing her passion and excitement. Mabel suddenly realizes her courage becomes slightly embarrassed, but continues to strive to meet the mysterious mythical beast. A vision of a wild cat appears in the meadow, which causes delight among the heroes, but suddenly a sound is heard, and the birds fly away in alarm. Mabel, in the hands of a maid, surprises those around her, with her behavior attracting attention, with her unusual reactions and bright eyes. Oscar anxiously asks when Mabel will be able to speak, and watches her, not realizing that her behavior could be a signal. Suddenly, Mabel makes a meow-like sound, which shocks everyone who hears her, creating a wave of surprise and bewilderment. The servants discuss not believing their ears, that Mabel said meow, and the girl herself clearly realizes what she has done. The character's overall reaction suggests they were expecting special signs from Mabel, but her strange behavior only adds to the intrigue. As Mabel reflects on why she cares so much about the reactions of others, she feels that her actions evoke strong emotions. Mabel realizes that because she is in a child's body, her behavior becomes impulsive, but her mind still remains that of an adult. Inside the small body, Yoon-Gye-ul still resides, and this discovery makes her think about her future and actions. Looking at her small hands, Mabel reflects on how her new body and age affect her decisions and those around her. Mabel began speaking for the first time, surprising everyone around her. The maid was delighted, calling her a genius, but the girl herself was embarrassed by her first word. Her mumbled "Abu" causes a storm of delight among the adults, but Prince Oscar remains indifferent, thinking that she should speak more meaningfully. Mabel chooses meow as her first word, surprising everyone. The prince is disappointed, as the cat has become more important than him. Oscar feels pained by the realization that her attention is not his. Mabel's gaze becomes serious, watching his emotions. The girl notices that something has shaken the prince, and as if trying to console him, directs her actions towards him, surprising those around her. The maid offers Oscar a hug from the princess. He's hesitant, but complies, feeling slightly embarrassed. Mabel reflects that after her rebirth, she never asked to be hugged first. But seeing the prince's pain, she changes her mind. The prince finally takes her in his arms, a touching moment for him. Mabel hugs Oscar for the first time, strengthening the bond between them. The girl continues to repeat, meow, surprising everyone with her persistent interest. Oscar tries to figure out what she wants to show him. Mabel hints that she's interested in the mythical beast that appeared at her birth. Oscar agrees to explore the place with her. In a forest clearing, the children listen intently, but all is silent and no one is in sight. Questions raise doubts, but their attention is focused on the search. When touching on recent events, the friends can't decide whether it was a joke or reality. Their argument brightens the atmosphere, but a mystery remains. Oscar holds Mabel carefully in his arms, reassuring her that everything is all right. Despite his words, doubts still linger in her soul, making her want to turn back. Mabel stares into the distance, trying to catch the details. Her blue eyes reflect determination, and suddenly, a faint glimmer catches her attention. Suddenly, a slight movement catches the group's attention. Mabel expresses delight, and Oscar tries to figure out what's happened to calm everyone down. Mabel is stunned by the sight of the golden mythical beast. The family discusses its beauty as the beast gazes at the girl, sparkling with magic. The girl remembers being reborn in a new world and is surprised by the beast's interest. She feels observed and fascinated by its behavior. Oscar holds Mabel in his arms as the beast circles nearby. Mabel notices his attention, but suddenly sneezes and the beast runs away. Mabel is disappointed that the beast has disappeared. The nanny urges them to return, noticing that the girl has caught a cold from the fresh air. Larima and Clavier are punished by Madame for the mess left behind by the incident. Oscar promises to return to play again. Mabel reflects that the walk was interesting, thanks to the encounter with the mythical beast. She understands that getting outside can be beneficial. The nanny is worried about Mabel's health. They bundle her up to prevent her from catching a cold. Oscar explains that she was cold. Mabel notices a stranger with green eyes and a mysterious air. His arrogant demeanor makes her wonder who he is. The nanny calls the man Duchess Donovan, and Mabel remembers hearing the name before, but cannot remember the details. Oscar and Mabel continue their journey, reflecting on the day's events. Mabel realizes that her new world is full of surprises and possibilities. Duchess Pacifica, Donovan, mother of the first Prince Oscar, is known for her steely will, but after her divorce from the Emperor, she remained strong and became a duchess. The Emperor was married twice. His first wife was Pacifica Donovan. Theirs was a marriage of convenience, but they separated after Oscar's birth. Pacifica overcame the courtiers' resistance and took her place as Duchess. The Emperor's second wife was the sweet and gentle Shiana Gardenia. After Mabel's birth, Shiana died, leaving her daughter an orphan. A month passed as the court adjusted to its new reality. Oscar felt insecure in his mother's presence. He felt like an unwanted child born from another marriage. For Pacifica, Mabel was just a reminder of the Emperor's second wife, Oscar. However, tried his best to maintain his composure and not show weakness. Mabel, although under the care of a nanny, decided to run away for an adventure. Oscar was concerned, trying to prevent her disappearance. Panic gripped the guards when it became clear that the child had slipped out of the palace. The guards, caught off guard, froze in surprise. Pacifica notices Oscar's anxiety and concern for his little sister. She begins to realize that a special bond is developing between the children. Despite all the obstacles, Mabel feels safe under her brother's gaze. She reaches out to him, and for the first time, he smiles genuinely. A cry of alarm rings out across the city as a dark figure with scarlet eyes appears among the chains. The magical energy surrounding him frightens everyone. Suddenly, it becomes clear that this figure is a child. His gaze is cold, and the surrounding knights are paralyzed by fear. The knights try to capture the boy, but his magic destroys the castle's defenses. People begin to panic, realizing his power. Amid the chaos on the street, Oscar screams at his nanny to leave immediately. His gaze is intense, sensing danger. Mabel, sitting in the carriage, suddenly feels a strange connection. Her blue eyes meet the boy's scarlet ones, and the world freezes. At that moment, she feels as if they are alone in this space. Her heart fills with a strange feeling of unease. Oscar notices her condition and tells her that they need to leave this place immediately. He's clearly concerned about the threat posed by the child. The nanny quickly whisks the children away, trying not to look back. However, Oscar constantly checks to make sure the boy isn't following them. Chaos continues in the castle. The knights scream, trying to catch the child, but his strength proves too great for them. Mabel looks out the window, trying to understand what happened. She can't shake the feeling that this child will change their destiny. The magnificent palace amazes with its architectural forms, but the calm atmosphere is unexpectedly broken when an alarming message suddenly sounds. The young man in the elegant suit is astonished by what he hears. The Devlin demon has become active. His tension instantly turns to panic. The figure of a demon appears on stage, imprisoned in a magic circle. Breaking free of its bonds, the demon escapes control right in the palace. The young man is stunned. Fate has brought Their Highness Mabel into danger on the very first day of the walk, which seems like an incredible coincidence. Despite the apparent safety, the man can't shake off his fear for Mabel. His nervousness becomes almost comical. Emperor Esteban holds the infant Mabel in his arms. His cold gaze suggests his inevitable rage when he learns of what has happened. The young man describes how the demon lost consciousness, having completely exhausted its magical powers, but he cannot explain the details of the incident. The scene switches to the Emperor's quiet office, where he is calmly going about his business, while the young man continues to think restlessly. The Emperor notices him, and he nervously tries to explain himself. Trying to justify himself, he barely contains his embarrassment before Esteban's stern gaze. He recounts Mabel's encounter with the demon, trying to convince her that nothing serious happened, but the internal tension remains. Esteban sat calmly at the table with a cup of tea in his hands. Everything had turned out to be less terrifying than he expected, and he was lucky. The smiling young man reported that Mabel saw a mystical creature and said the word meow, causing him surprise. The teacup fell from Esteban's hands and broke, leaving him in shock. The young man was horrified as the cup was incredibly expensive. Esteban turned to his assistant, Gustav, demanding an explanation. The atmosphere around him grew increasingly tense. Gustav reported that Mabel had encountered a creature known as the Devlin Devil and called it meow, which further excited Esteban. Objects began breaking in the room. Esteban asked his assistant to explain why the events with Mabel were so disturbing to him. The young man was nervous, fearing that even the surrounding ceramics might be damaged. The entire national heritage was at risk. Esteban called the situation a disgrace, demanding to see Mabel immediately. Gustav followed him to check on the situation. The emperor was outraged that Mabel's meow was more important than a diplomatic meeting with a prisoner from another country that was waiting. Mabel lay on her bed, complaining about the heat. She remembered the walk where she'd merely sneezed and worried that it had caused more chaos. Mabel, a pink-haired girl, lies in a luxurious crib. She reflects on the strangeness of being in the imperial palace and tries to adjust to her new surroundings. Mabel remembers the red-eyed boy she met earlier. That look left a strange sense of unease that lingers in her. Emperor Esteban enters the hall with his entourage. He asks how Mabel's walk went. The girl notices that Esteban is watching her closely. Esteban lifts Mabel into his arms, surprised by her weight. His companions explain that the girl has just eaten and covered her with clothing to prevent her from catching a cold. The emperor examines the toy, which he hadn't noticed before, and asks if it had been tested for poison. The servants confirm that everything is fine, but he insists on careful attention. Mabel watches Esteban interrogate those around him. She tries to understand his behavior, realizing that he genuinely cares. Suddenly, Mabel makes a meowing sound which confuses Esteban. He realizes it's her first word and starts laughing. Mabel continues to say meow, realizing it's the only word she knows. Everyone present finds it funny and cute. Esteban jokes that Mabel apparently loves cats more than people. He happily embraces her strange concept. In the end, he says that since she likes cats so much, she should see the forest in the northern part of the palace where one special cat lives. Emperor Esteban carefully holds Mabel, his 2-month-old daughter. He announces that he is giving her the northern forest, shocking everyone. Mabel is surprised by this decision, her bright eyes expressing incomprehension. Her aides clarify that this is an order from the emperor, not a joke. Esteban confidently declares that the forest's gift to his daughter is an act of love. His assistants are perplexed, as Mabel is still too young to appreciate the gift. The emperor's aides discuss the landscape, but Esteban believes it's important to Mabel. The little girl's expression gives him pause. One of the assistants tries to explain that the forest isn't the best gift. Esteban ignores this and remains committed to his decision. The emperor decides to give Mabel a castle as well. His assistants are shocked by his extravagance, and the little girl still looks dissatisfied. Esteban adds that the northern forest remains hers. Mabel looks at her father with distrust, and the assistants whisper about his odd behavior. Time passes, Mabel grows up. Her life is surrounded by attention and luxury. However, the empire begins preparations for the arrival of important guests. Priests from the Holy Kingdom of Abelardo arrive at the imperial palace, claiming a connection with the gods. This event underscores the importance of their visit. Emperor Esteban greets his guests, introducing the grandeur of his court. All eyes are focused on his confidence and charisma. Esteban, sitting in the throne room, reflects with cold contempt on the representatives of the temple, whom he considers insignificant and hypocritical. The priest and the scholar appear hinting at the unexpectedness of the visit. Esteban expresses his surprise, with restraint hiding his irritation. The guest thanks them for their support, promising important research results. Then he mentions Princess Mabel, causing tension in the room. Esteban immediately corrects his guest, emphasizing the princess's correct name. His gaze hardens, revealing his hidden connection to Mabel. The name Winter, from the prophecy, is associated with the princess's birth. The Holy King proclaims it, her middle name emphasizing her divine significance, as fate begins to weave its thread. Esteban, outraged by the decision, rejects the oracle's authority. He questions the prophecy's connection to his daughter, doubting the veracity of the words forced upon him by the Holy Kingdom. In distant Ermino, Mabel is born, and at that moment, a bright bolt of lightning splits the sky. These events are linked as a fateful coincidence, emphasizing her unique nature and connection to the prophecy. The Holy King, with a sly smile, awaits Esteban's reaction. In his hands is an object that should clarify everything. Esteban, despite his doubts, displays an inner tension. Esteban recalls how his character changed after their wedding, becoming softer. But faced with the threats of fate, he wonders if he will revert to his former harshness to protect his daughter. Mabel is a baby just beginning her life, and Esteban resents the idea of sending her to the holy city, fearing for her fate, and considering the prophecy insufficient as a basis for such decisions. The Holy King gives Esteban a relic of the past, an ornate pendant that promises to reveal the truth. This is a transfer of power and proof of the previous emperor's past assistance from the Holy Kingdom. Esteban sees the pendant as a link to the past, but is outraged by the idea of paying for the previous emperor's debts at the cost of his daughter. He considers it unfair and questions its intentions. Esteban makes a resolute declaration that he will never sell his daughter. The Holy King tries to convince him that the prophecy is connected to protecting Mabel, but this intensifies the internal conflict. A determination flares in Esteban's heart. He realizes he can't abandon his daughter, and he ponders ways to keep her safe despite the pressure and fateful prophecies. Esteban reflects on the difficulty of dealing with Abelardo's representatives. Although he had hoped his adversary would be stubborn to the end, they made an unexpected request, complicating the situation. Abelardo's representatives request an audience with the Princess Esteban, realizes this was their true purpose. He feels compelled to agree, despite his inner resistance. Esteban recalls the old deal between the former emperor and the Holy King, which left him with no choice. He agrees to their request, but sets a condition to keep the situation under control. Esteban demands that the audience take place in his presence. He sets strict rules. Do not approach the princess within 20 meters. Do not touch her, and do not use magical powers. Esteban adds another condition. If Mabel starts crying, the audience will end immediately. He notes the absurdity of these demands, but is determined to protect her. Abelardo's representative is shocked by Esteban's behavior, considering him overly emotional. Esteban, however, makes it clear that he will protect Mabel at any cost if threatened. Meanwhile, Mabel is quietly in her room. Her nannies and maids are busy, and there's an unusual silence all around. She dreams of trying something new on her own. The girl tries to roll over on her own, in bed, determined to succeed. Her internal monologues are filled with naivety and hope, but she encounters difficulties. Mabel continues to try, but she feels tired. She's frustrated by how difficult it is to accomplish tasks that seem simple to others. Her thoughts are filled with conflicting emotions. At that moment, Oscar appears, book in hand. He visits Mabel again, though she doesn't return his calls. Mabel is surprised by his persistence, but chooses not to respond. On the cozy stage, Oscar decides to read Mabel a book. Mabel, looking at her brother, assumes he'll bring something boring. However, the look of interest on Oscar's face promises an extraordinary evening. Oscar opens the book, and Mabel sees children's drawings on the pages, assuming they're fairy tales. Her eyes fill with hope, but everything changes when the text turns out to be anything but childish. Oscar suddenly begins reading about the author's philosophical musings, which leaves Mabel perplexed. She realizes the text is completely inappropriate for a 3-month-old. Mabel is confused because despite the intellectual style of the text, she can't understand why Oscar, who is 6 years old, is reading such books. Her thoughts are focused on the inappropriateness of what is happening. Oscar continues reading, claiming the text could be useful. Mabel protests, believing children wouldn't enjoy such books, but Oscar is surprised by her lack of interest. Oscar ruefully admits he expected Mabel to enjoy the text. The girl ruefully wonders how such a complex book could possibly interest a baby. Oscar promises to bring something more appropriate next time, hoping to please Mabel. She senses the growing tension, but smiles, hiding her emotions. A noise erupts in the room. Mabel notices that it's different from what usually accompanies the Emperor's appearance. The servants are also wary. Emperor Esteban enters the hall, accompanied by mysterious figures in white robes. Everyone bows in greeting, creating a solemn atmosphere. Mabel, lying in her cradle, feels the tension of what's happening. She watches the Emperor and the strange procession, wondering what has begun. Mabel lies on her bed, surrounded by soft light. She feels strange sounds and movements filling her space. Her thoughts are confused, but one thing is clear. Something inside her is churning and causing anxiety. The presence of the white-robed stranger is unsettling. His gaze is kind and bright, but Mabel feels his power penetrating her core. She wonders, does he see her true self? The priest, standing nearby, is amazed by Mabel's health and are suffused with holy energy. The closer he gets, the more her condition worsens. Mabel feels a wave of weakness overcome her. Emperor Esteban reminds the priest of the previously agreed-upon terms. The priest's gaze softens, and he confirms his understanding of the agreement, promising to follow the instructions. The priest expresses admiration at the sight of the prophecy's protagonist, Esteban, however, maintains his composure, in no hurry to confirm or deny the oracle's words. Mabel feels a sense of unease and confusion within herself. She catches their conversation, but doesn't fully understand it. A strange premonition grips her, as if they're talking about her. Mabel feels her condition is connected to the priest's presence. His divine power weighs heavily on her consciousness. She begins to wonder if this could be connected to her destiny. Esteban reassures Mabel that everything is under control. A priest who has arrived from the distant lands of Abelardo wants to see her to confirm her true nature. The priest confirms that he has come for an audience to meet Mabel. His warm, almost mystical gaze reveals his deep respect for the girl. Concluding the meeting, the priest hints at the capture of someone important. His words penetrate deep into the hearts of those present. It becomes clear that the future depends on decisions made here and now. A mysterious young man, possessing the ability to use magic without intermediaries, is restrained by chains and magical crystals. Even under strict control, his powers are terrifying. Mabel ponders the nickname Devlin's Devil. She thought it was funny, but Esteban's words hint at a vast power capable of troubling even the sacred kingdom. Esteban is alarmed by the mention of Devlin. He realizes there are sinister plans behind it and prepares for possible threats, assessing the situation with cold calculation. The advisor warns Esteban of the consequences of returning the hostages. He points out that this could impact Hermano's empire and urges him to be vigilant in his actions. The priests, bidding farewell to Esteban, call Mabel Princess Hermano. Their departure leaves a sense of unease, as if the politeness concealed a secret. As soon as the priests leave the hall, Mabel feels her nausea suddenly disappear. She's surprised as there was no hostility in the guests' gazes. As the priests leave the palace, they leave behind a strange glow. Mabel tries to understand what happened and why their presence evoked such powerful feelings in her. Oscar notices that Abelardo left sooner than expected. This makes him wonder about hidden plans that could threaten the empire's peace. Esteban is convinced the Holy King will not let matters slide so easily. He predicts new moves by the enemy and prepares for possible maneuvers. Mabel reflects on her connection to the aforementioned Devlin Empire and magical intrigue. She realizes that what she heard today directly affects her destiny. Little Mabel ponders why the Emperor resists her so much. She wonders what a powerful man and a baby he calls by a name so unusual to her, Winter, could possibly have in common. Esteban interrupts her thoughts with a gentle smile. He reassures the girl, hinting that she doesn't need to understand everything. Mabel is surprised by his caring tone, wondering if he's being overprotective. At night, the silence in the palace is broken only by the muffled voices of the nannies and guards. They decide to leave the sleeping girl alone, so as not to disturb her peace, and quietly leave her room. Once they're gone, Mabel, left alone, breathes a sigh of relief. She's glad that night is the only time she can be completely alone without feeling constantly watched. The girl decides to practice magic, but all her attempts prove unsuccessful. Her efforts yield no results, leaving her frustrated. She dreams of making progress sooner. Despite her failures, Mabel feels supported by her father and brother. Their daily attention leaves her confused as they remain unaware of her true thoughts and goals. She realizes she's being deceived by the feelings of those close to her who see her as nothing more than an innocent child. This makes her even more determined to grow up quickly and leave these walls. Her thoughts are interrupted by an unexpected noise. The girl tenses, as the sound isn't coming from the next room. The shutters where the wind is blowing alarm her, as the nanny would never leave them open. Looking around, she notices a silhouette entering her room. The stranger moves closer and closer, making her heart beat faster with fear and tension. In this terrifying silence, Mabel is left alone with her suspicions. She feels how this man's approach threatens to disturb her fragile peace and plans for the future. Mabel, lying in her crib, hears footsteps and realizes she can't turn around to see the intruder. Her anxiety grows as someone has secretly entered her chambers through the window. Realizing that it is not the Emperor or Oscar, Mabel tries to figure out who this man is and why he is sneaking into the nursery in the middle of the night while everyone is asleep. Hearing familiar footsteps, Mabel begins to suspect that it is the same person who came earlier. Her eyes widen in anticipation of what will happen next. The mysterious man turns out to be a priest. He softly announces that she's awake, and Mabel realizes her suspicions have been confirmed. The priest says he's come to take her away. Mabel, horrified, thinks he's trying to kidnap her and decides she can scream for help. She begins to cry loudly, attracting the priest's attention. He is distraught at Mabel's tears and asks her to calm down, but the child cries louder. Mabel's cries become so loud that the priest becomes nervous, fearing someone will hear the noise. She, however, is triumphant at his confusion. The priest tries to calm Mabel down, but she only increases her screaming, trying her best to draw attention to her situation. Suddenly, someone else appears in the room, a shadow in the dim light reaching out to Mabel. She screams in panic for them to stay away. Mabel, realizing she's trapped in a child's body and physically powerless, decides to resort to deception. She continues to cry to cause chaos and thwart her captors. Mabel, trapped in the body of an infant, experiences acute dissatisfaction with her situation. She tries to move, but her body is uncontrollable, causing her despair. She makes a tremendous effort to overcome this weakness. Gathering her strength, Mabel stubbornly continues her attempts to move. Despite the pain and fatigue, her efforts bring initial success, but in doing so, she finds herself in an awkward position, attracting the attention of those around her. Overcoming the tension, Mabel finally manages to roll over. This discovery brings her joy and pride, filling her with hope. She feels victorious in the struggle against her helpless body. Suddenly, her joy is marred by a noise. Emperor Esteban, alarmed by the situation, intervenes, causing everyone present to freeze. His stern voice draws attention, heightening the tension. Esteban casts an accusing glance at the woman, present, demanding an explanation. She tries to justify herself, claiming she didn't harm Mabel. His intense attention to the situation heightens the drama. Mabel remains at the center of the action, lying awkwardly. Esteban continues to investigate what happened, increasing his concern for his daughter. Mabel draws attention to herself, reminding him of her fragility and vulnerability. Esteban draws his sword in anger, preparing to strike. He demands confirmation of the accusations, and the prisoner, in fear, swears by God that he is telling the truth. Those around him are gripped by tension and fear at his determination. Mabel remembers the kidnapper trying to grab her, but failing to even touch her. She decides to intervene, realizing she doesn't want innocents to die, and begins to proceed with caution. Mabel tries to help Esteban. However, turning around and acting on her own is difficult. She faces internal doubts, realizing how crucial her help is in this situation. Esteban is furious at not being able to witness Mabel's first manifestation of her powers. His frustration is compounded by his belief that her interference is the cause of his disappointment. The courtiers discuss the broken barrier protecting the kingdom. Security is becoming increasingly tense, and they admit they overlooked crucial details, allowing enemies to gain entry. It turns out that Mabel holds a unique position. She is second in line to the throne and the sole heir to the Margrave of Gardenia. Her status makes her a prime target for the family's political enemies. Political intrigue is revealed when it becomes clear that the enemy used a ruse to kidnap Mabel by breaching the barrier. The plot was clearly long planned and carefully executed. Esteban realizes that Mabel's kidnapping was planned from the start. He feels a deep sense of guilt for what happened and vows to punish those responsible, despite the difficult situation. Esteban's advisors try to persuade him not to take too harsh measures to avoid diplomatic conflicts. However, he decides to act decisively because Mabel's safety is at stake. Esteban is willing to take any measures to protect Mabel. His determination to take revenge on his enemies and eliminate the threat becomes clear, despite the warnings of those around him. Emperor Esteban discusses diplomatic relations, noting that Mabel, despite her resilience, cried over the incident. This evokes mixed feelings in him, demonstrating his concern. Esteban is surprised by rumors of his infatuation, with the princess showering her with gifts and riches. He acknowledges that her favor is important, as it has changed his attitude toward others. Gerald voices his concerns about the Montego case. Esteban decides to put the matter aside for now, and trust Gerald's insight, hinting at his loyalty and wisdom. Esteban decides to appoint Mabel a personal guard capable of standing by her side and protecting her. He announces this openly, hoping to find a volunteer among his subjects. Esteban reflects on the weight of responsibility, comparing it to a cup of honey filled with difficulties. He realizes that any wrong decision can lead to dire consequences. No one present dares to become Mabel's guard. But suddenly, a mysterious person appears confidently, offering his help, causing surprise among those around him. The new guard declares her readiness to protect the princess. Her determination and professionalism immediately inspire Esteban's confidence, and he accepts her candidacy. Mabel enjoys a moment of peace in her crib, reflecting on the harshness of the world around her. She treasures these rare moments when she can simply be a child. The courtiers discuss the news of the Montego affair and remark on the princess's participation in the negotiations. This evokes admiration for her wisdom, despite her young age. Mabel dreams of a real family she can rely on. She envies sibling-like relationships and hopes to one day find the same support. The fox, with a broad smile and genuine warmth, addresses the little Princess Mabel. Her sleepy surprise and awkward reaction create a moment that is both comical and touching, but the sudden awakening causes a bit of chaos. Mabel looks, and the fox is immediately at her side. The girl watches him warily, wondering who he is and why he's acting so friendly. The fox delights in her confusion, calling her cute in her moments of fear. Fox, with an ironic smile, reminds Mabel of his first impression, hinting at her coldness. She irritably asks who he's talking to so warmly. A woman in an elegant dress enters the room, interrupting them. Lise recognizes the newcomer as Madame Ruth, and they begin exchanging pleasantries. Her appearance adds to the tension, as her name is linked to the former empress's family. Memories are revived, filling the atmosphere with formal respect. Madame Ruth flatteringly remarks that Fox has become even more attractive. Fox responds gallantly, hinting at their future encounters. Meanwhile, Mabel watches from her bed, indignant that such a man is assigned to guard her. Mabel can't believe that a member of the Empress's family has become her bodyguard. Despite any possible prejudices, Fox initially displays a friendly attitude, but the girl still doesn't trust him. Mabel wonders why Fox is trying so hard to impress her when he clearly doesn't like her. Her tender emotions give way to irritation, but those around her continue to regard her as a sweet angel, even though she's seething inside. Nanny Mabel, worried about the princess after the night's attack, tries to console her. But Mabel, encouraged by Nanny's kindness, begins to calm down. Fox observes their interaction, noting the woman's sincerity. The fox, still watching the scene, decides that Mabel is pretending to be sweet to deceive those around her. However, he is pleased to see how the nanny's genuine smile warms the girl, creating a rare moment of peace. The fox humorously says that Mabel isn't just a person, but an angel descended from heaven. His emotional reaction evokes laughter and surprise, from everyone emphasizing how captivated he is by her charm despite her coldness. Mabel is outraged by the appointment of a knight who she considers foolish as her guard. Considering it mockery on the part of the emperor, she loses her patience, seeing this as further evidence of his dislike for herself. The girl begins to think about her future and becomes overwhelmed with anxiety. She wonders if she can cope with the situation and be safe. Oscar usually appears serious, which reflects the expectations placed on him as the successor. Society sees him as a source of hope, which influences his behavior. However, in person, Oscar behaves like a normal child. His childish antics leave Mabel slightly perplexed. She didn't expect such simplicity in his behavior. Oscar suddenly appears in the room, drawing everyone's attention. His behavior seems out of place, but he remains calm. The fox chides Oscar for his frivolous behavior. He emphasizes the importance of maintaining boundaries for an heir who must be a role model for others. Despite his gentle nature, Oscar faces harsh criticism. Liz believes the boy needs to practice more and perform better. Mabel notices how Fox's voice is getting harsher, which worries her. She wants to support Oscar, but she doesn't know how yet. Oscar leaves listening thoughtfully to the adult's words. Mabel decides she needs to find a way to help him as she senses his vulnerability. Watching Oscar, Mabel realizes that behind his confidence lies a child who needs support. She promises herself to do everything she can to help him. Little Mabel begins to cry, surprising everyone around her, as she's never done so before. Oscar tries to comfort her, but suddenly loses his balance, causing concern among the others. Oscar picks Mabel up, and his calm presence helps her stop crying. She cuddles trustingly against him, touching those around her and emphasizing her affection for the prince. Mabel realizes that she feels more at ease around Oscar. She concludes that his presence calms her down. This makes her consider how to reduce their interactions so as not to attract unnecessary attention. To avoid unwanted situations, Mabel decides to redirect Oscar's attention. She acts decisively, forcing him to hand her over to another adult, although this seems unexpected to those around her. To defuse the situation, Mabel makes a loud meow-like sound. This shocks and confuses everyone, including Oscar, who is witnessing her unusual behavior for the first time. Mabel's bodyguard Fox watches the proceedings. The others discuss her emotional attachment to the prince and explain that her mood is directly affected by his presence, which prompts further reflection. The fox expresses his concern, surprised by Mabel's strange behavior. To him, the situation seems absurd, as Mabel has never shown such emotion before. Mabel begins to reflect on her behavior. She realizes that her daily anticipation of meeting Oscar has become habitual. This makes her uncomfortable, but she can't deny her feelings. The fox walks down the long corridor, lost in thought. He tries to comprehend the entire situation and find a way to cope with the princess's unexpected actions. Meeting his sister Lise discusses his new assignment. He admits he never wanted to be the princess's personal guard, but also notes that he likes children. His emotions remain mixed. Liz, the bodyguard, reflects on his mistress's strict stance, realizing he must live up to her demands. In her presence, he feels the need to be disciplined and collected. The fox discusses his impressions of the princess with the heroine, recalling how struck he was by her spontaneity and kindness. His admiration flared instantly, and he describes her as the sweetest of them all. Trying to ease the tension, Fox assures his mistress that he shares her strict principles regarding the princess. He promises to be as demanding as she is and to maintain discipline. In the past, a little boy named Oscar appeared in the imperial palace. He seemed lonely, but sometimes the fox would come to him to brighten his loneliness. These moments left a mark on their lives. Despite her care, Oscar's sister was strict and believed he needed to put childish games aside to focus on his future. This determined Oscar's path and upbringing. Despite his young age, Oscar faced high demands. His sister entrusted his education to Liz, insisting on a strict approach. Liz found this parenting style difficult to accept. Despite his doubts, the fox follows his mistress's instructions. He understands that little Oscar is struggling, but he knows this approach will strengthen his character. However, he is tormented by internal conflicts. Liz observes his mistress and recognizes her inner struggle. He understands that her sternness stems from concern for Oscar's future, but worries that it will create a rift between them. The fox ponders how to improve the relationship between the princess and her sister to avoid future conflicts. He decides to exercise patience and wisdom to smooth over the rough edges. Time flies and nature changes. The fox understands that their efforts will bear fruit, but he doesn't yet know what the future will hold. All he can do is believe in the best and keep working. Mabel reflects on how boring she is in the new world, remembering her past life. She easily masters all the skills she could possibly learn, and boredom overwhelms her completely. Realizing that her childhood habits are beginning to fade, she begins to strictly monitor her behavior to avoid making mistakes. Even baby food is a way for her to feel like she's becoming human again. She dreams of trying ordinary food, soon imagining all the delicacies that must be available to members of the imperial family. Recalling her past life, she regrets the pleasures she missed. Lost in memories of the old days, Mabel tries to distract herself from the despondency. She notices that something unusual is happening today at the door of Fox, her guard. Mabel reflects on Lise, remembering his role as Oscar's teacher. She knows how strict he can be, and his teaching methods worry her, especially with children. The girl notes that Lise only relaxes in her presence. However, observing his behavior, she begins to wonder if he will change when Oscar arrives. In one situation, Mabel suddenly meows loudly, causing laughter and surprise among those around her. They discuss her unusual behavior, associating it with her feelings. Mabel is feeling bored and says she wants the night to end so she can do something interesting. Those around her suggest a walk to lighten her mood. During the discussion of the walk, a kitten is mentioned, which is believed to be Mabel's favorite. Her fascination with meowing leads those around her to believe that she actually adores cats. Although she has a soft spot for cats, Mabel admits to herself that her interest in them is exaggerated. She's confident that one day she'll be able to explain everything to others once she's able to speak fluently. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, looks at the adults with curiosity. They notice her interest and kindly offer to look at the kitten. The girl's eyes shine, but a doubt lingers in her soul, as if no one understands her feelings. Mabel notices how hot it has become around her and reflects on how much has changed since she's been in the castle. A gentle breeze touches her face, and she's momentarily lost in her thoughts, trying to adjust to the new surroundings. Summer brings a pleasant warmth, and Mabel finds herself out for a walk. Her caring nanny covers her with an umbrella to keep the sun from causing discomfort. The girl realizes she's been taken out to experience the beauty of this season. Nature amazes Mabel. The vibrant scent of flowers filling the air draws her attention. The girl seems to be rediscovering the world, absorbing every detail. Her eyes are wide with wonder. Mabel picks up one of the flowers her nanny gives her. It's soft and delicate. She's struck by its beauty and remarks that she's never received a bouquet before. Flowers become a symbol of something distant and dear to her. Thinking back, Mabel feels sad. She feels lonely because even at important moments in her life, like graduation, no one came to support her. Her thoughts transport her back to those days, evoking a slight bitterness. Mabel tries to distract herself, but she can't stop thinking about the past. She holds the flower, but her thoughts are still somewhere far away. Her face expresses sadness, but she fights the feeling. The servants invite Mabel to go into the forest to see the kitten. She agrees, and together, they head into the thicket. The girl carefully examines her surroundings, expecting something unusual. On the way, Mabel overhears the guards discussing her. A rustling sound catches her interest. She begins searching for the kitten, feeling excited and curious despite her fatigue. Finally, in the bushes, Mabel spots a small kitten emitting a soft meow. She gazes at it with delight, forgetting all her worries. Her heart fills with joy at this small but significant meeting. A glittering golden cat appears in a clearing in the forest, surprising Mabel and Xavier. The girl looks at him with delight, and Xavier notices that this time the cat has come to them, as if expecting to meet them. Mabel is surprised to see the fluffy, golden-furred creature again. Xavier notices that the kitten has grown noticeably. The cat responds with a loud meow, as if to confirm this. Mabel reacts with delight when the cat rubs against her hand. She recalls that this mythical beast may have appeared on her birthday, wondering if it is connected to her destiny. The girl ponders the connection between the cat and the holy prophecy, but doesn't yet understand its meaning. The heat makes her feel unwell, and Xavier decides to take her to the lake, asking her to say goodbye to the cat. Xavier picks Mabel up and offers to say goodbye to the cat. The girl hesitates, but eventually repeats the words, which brings Xavier genuine joy. He smiles, admiring her efforts. Mabel is embarrassed by the praise, considering it unnecessary. The golden cat, as if understanding her thoughts, glances in her direction briefly and leaves. The girl quietly wishes for him to return again. Mabel suddenly hears a strange voice and wonders if it's a heat hallucination. Xavier notices nothing but her weakness and decides to quicken his pace to help her faster. On the way to the lake, Xavier encourages Mabel, urging her on, and even jogs for fun. Lisandro, the security guard, follows closely behind, creating a fun but chaotic situation. Eventually, Xavier decides to rest. He lies down on the grass, placing Mabel next to him to allow her to recover. Their companions discuss returning to the castle. While everyone else's attention is occupied, Mabel takes the opportunity to run around and enjoy the freedom. She relishes the space, knowing that such moments are rare. Mabel, playing in the meadow, notices Xavier lying on the grass in complete tranquility. He's clearly resting, but she chides him for his lack of attention to her highness, eliciting smiles and a slight shyness from those around him. Xavier replies that he's keeping an eye on her, but continues to lazily rest. Mabel, with a hint of mockery, suggests he's tired and suggests he should exercise more before leaving him alone. Noticing something strange in the bushes, Mabel approaches. A glowing object catches her attention. Surprised, she decides to check it out, moving closer and closer to the mysterious source. Suddenly, her gaze falls on a man lying in the grass. It's a boy with black hair. Mabel recognizes him. It's the same mysterious Devlin devil she'd met earlier. She recalls that during their first meeting, the boy was captured by knights. This shocks her as she thought he was still in prison, and now she sees him bleeding. The boy's condition frightens her. Mabel realizes he's seriously injured and wonders who could have treated him so cruelly. It seems completely unacceptable to her and evokes pity. The girl notes that the boy is about the same age as her friend Oscar. She decides to help, but her weak body prevents her from taking any significant action, even though she tries to crawl toward him. Realizing her limitations, she considers how to wipe away the blood, but her strength isn't even enough to call for help. Her abilities are limited to slow movement. At this point, Xavier wakes up and notices that Mabel has crawled quite a distance away from him. Surprised, he gets up to check what's happened, as her behavior seems strange to him. Mabel panics, wondering what to do in this situation. She's tormented by thoughts of helping the boy, but then she hears footsteps and realizes she's been found. Mabel carefully hides something in the grass, deciding to keep it hidden until someone arrives. At that moment, Xavier, looking around cheerfully, calls out to her, teasingly calling her princess, as if trying to catch her off guard. The girl hurries to complete her actions before anyone notices her. Finally, a flash of light appears in the grass. A wounded boy with black hair appears before her, covered in green leaves. Opening his eyes, the mysterious youth reveals himself to be Devlin's devil. Mabel is struck by his red eyes and mysterious aura. His enigmatic gaze seems to draw her in, leaving her hesitant. Mabel finds herself overcome by a strange sensation caught in the stranger's red eyes. She resists the urge to get closer and decides to run. Panicked, she calls out for Xavier, but uneasiness grows within her. Xavier arrives just in time and is relieved to see Mabel. He laughs at her worried expression and asks her solicitously how she ended up in this situation. What frightened her? Having calmed down, Mabel admits to Xavier that she did everything she could to help. Her attention still returns to the mysterious young man she left in the clearing, surrounded by greenery. Devlin's devil, in a stupor, recalls his existence plunged into darkness. He sees fragments of memories, where he loses control and becomes a weapon of destruction without feelings or choice. His past is filled with dark scenes of himself, shrouded in darkness, killing indiscriminately like an instrument, All of this causes him pain and self-loathing, plunging him into endless despair. In rare moments of his existence, he comes to his senses. His magical abilities were once trapped in a sphere that held his power, turning him into a prisoner. Suddenly, the magical barrier was breached, and Devlin's devil escaped. The guards discovered his absence, and Mabel remains unaware of how fateful her encounter with this mysterious creature will be. Against the backdrop of the forest, a command to seize the fugitive is heard, and the tension mounts. A young man with black hair, clearly wounded, realizes he's near Hermano's palace. He's being pursued, and he's forced to continue running, overcoming the pain. The wounded boy tries to escape despite his weakness. His mind suddenly clears, and at that moment, he meets the gaze of someone unexpected. This piercing feeling makes him freeze. His gaze meets that of a blue-eyed child, and it surprises him. This encounter disorientates him, causing him to lose consciousness again. He feels himself at the edge of his strength. Having barely regained consciousness, the boy wonders what this strange feeling of clarity was. He realizes he's lost a lot of blood and decides to rest for a while, collapsing to the ground in the middle of the forest. Lying in the grass, he hopes a little rest will help him regain his strength. A blue-eyed, pink-haired girl appears nearby. He senses her presence, but believes she poses no threat. The girl comes closer, unafraid of his wounded state. He thinks she'll leave soon and tries to relax again. Her actions leave him mildly surprised. He smells the herbs the girl gathers and brings him. This awakens his consciousness again, and he begins to realize that something unusual is happening around him, as if the limitation on his power has been lifted. A girl's light footsteps are heard nearby, and she tries to speak to him. She notices that he seems lost. Her innocence surprises him, and he watches her actions in silence. The boy notices another person approaching. He tries to figure out who this person is and how they are connected to the girl. At this moment, the night air seems hotter to him than the day. His gaze shifts to the majestic palace rising in the darkness of the night. The young man reflects on the strange coincidences and sensations that overtook him that day. Realizing that the night has brought changes, Mabel, feeling very unwell, lies in bed, her body engulfed in fever. Her maid, alarmed by the girl's condition, rushes to call a doctor, realizing her mistress's health is in jeopardy. Recalling how they were caught in a pouring rain, the maid laments that it was all due to the unexpected weather. On the way back, Mabel got soaked despite the staff's efforts to protect her. Back home, Mabel was thoroughly washed and changed, but the fever persisted. She thinks she was experiencing her first summer cold one, so severe she'd never experienced before. Esteban, having learned of Mabel's illness, came to her chambers. He was concerned about her condition, noticing how difficult it was for her to cope with even a simple cold, and was worried about her health. The emperor regrets that he cannot share her suffering. Understanding how difficult it is for her now, he tries to reassure himself, trusting the doctors who gave her a fever reducer. Esteban confirms Mabel's need for rest, believing the medication will help manage her fever. He looks at her with concern, convinced that rest will speed her recovery. Xavier suddenly bursts into the chambers, loudly announcing urgent news. His casualness confuses and slightly angers the emperor, but he listens patiently. Unable to bear the gravity of the situation, Xavier panics and tries to justify his appearance, which further irritates Esteban, who remains coolly calm. Esteban asks Xavier to continue, but his composure only further dismays the young man. He runs off, leaving everyone bewildered, and the emperor returns to Mabel. As if he'd forgotten the incident, Esteban focused on the girl again. His anxiety slowly subsided, confident that she would be fine thanks to the efforts of those around her. Esteban learned that the unknown enemy had easily overcome the magical barriers and attacked the guards before escaping. The only clues were traces of blood leading to the northern forest, but they vanished there. He remembered Mabel walking by the lake near the forest. The thought of the girl's possible encounter with the intruder made him feel relieved that it hadn't happened. Esteban ordered the castle's security to be increased tenfold, but was informed that security had already been increased 20-fold. Despite this, he insisted on continuing the search in the forest. After inspecting the castle, he gave orders that no one was to be allowed in or out without special permission. His attention was focused on Mabel's complete safety. Esteban stood by Mabel's crib for a long time, watching her sleep peacefully. She looked so fragile and small, and he quietly begged her not to get sick, worrying about her future. Conflicts raged within Esteban. Despite his power and wealth, he felt powerless, unable to protect the person most dear to him at a critical moment. Facing the past, he turned to Shiana, remembering how she had sacrificed herself for their child. He understood her sacrifice and the pain she had hidden in choosing their daughter. He suddenly realized he could have saved both Mabel and Shiana, but his decision to take her for their shared safety had been too cruel for her. This feeling haunted him. Esteban remained in the room, with Shiana quietly asking for forgiveness. Internal torment and regrets about the past haunted him, and he searched for a way to atone for his guilt. But her words reminded him that forgiveness wasn't what he was looking for. He didn't want an apology. He wanted to go back to the days when he could protect her and Mabel, but that was no longer possible. Esteban reflects on how difficult it was to accept the passing of his loved one, whose words of forgiveness were never his last. He feels a deep wound in his heart that has become a scar. Looking at little Mabel, Esteban resolves to protect this child from all harm to keep her safe. However, a glimmer of fear lingers in his soul, wondering if he'll be up to the task. Esteban admits to himself that his fear is immense, and he was afraid to even accept this responsibility. This feeling led him to consider abandoning his mission. He stands next to Mabel's crib, wondering what's frightening him so much. He looks at her and asks for forgiveness, realizing that he is now her father. Esteban finally convinces himself that he can handle this and protect Mabel because he's her dad. These thoughts fill him with determination and confidence. Mabel, suffering from the heat, feels dizzy and realizes there is no one left in her life who can help her. She understands that she must cope on her own. Finding expired medication, the girl is disillusioned, realizing she doesn't even have the money to buy new ones. Bitter memories of losing her father surface. Her thoughts return to her mother, who she says will never return. This fact makes her even more alone and causes her pain and sadness. Mabel is tormented by questions about why her parents didn't love her and why she always ends up alone. Her pain is compounded by the realization that in the eyes of others, she looks pathetic. Lying on the floor, she wonders if it would make her feel better to know the reason for her loneliness. But alone, she realizes no one will answer that question. That night, Mabel heard an unfamiliar male voice. She found it reassuring. After asking if her father was back, she felt a cool sensation on her forehead, which surprised her as she didn't have a father. She felt warmth and care as she was given a spoonful of medicine. A man's voice soothed her, telling her to get well and that they could go for a walk together, leaving her in tender dreams. Her mind was racing and she dreamed of a stranger claiming to be her father. Mabel couldn't believe it, as she'd never had one. However, he assured her he could protect her. Her heart filled with longing and a longing for family. Even though she thought it was a dream, she felt a warmth and security that seemed so real that she didn't want to wake up. Mabel wanted to believe in the dream, because here she was, accepted and forgiven, no matter what she was. Even knowing it was an illusion, she enjoyed the peace, afraid that waking up would ruin this fairy tale. She saw herself in a cozy bed, with a white-haired man sitting next to her. Her mind begged her not to end the dream, because she felt calm here, and the world seemed bright and kind. Waking up brought the realization that a damp towel had touched her face. Recalling her condition, Mabel realized she had caught a cold, and mentally thanked them for their concern, not understanding where it came from. She felt a sense of relief knowing she was feeling better. Vaguely recalling the events of the night, she was lost in thoughts of who might be nearby. The thought of support warmed her. Mabel decided to dismiss the memory of the man, dismissing it as just a dream. She rose from the bed, convincing herself there was nothing to fear, and that she should just move on with her life. Esteban suddenly appeared in the room. Mabel was surprised to recognize the Emperor, and her mind was filled with questions about why he was here and what this meant for her life. Esteban watches Mabel anxiously sleeping with a slight blush on her cheeks. He carefully checks to see if her temperature has dropped and wonders why he, rather than a nanny, is the one caring for the girl. Mabel wakes up to find the Emperor looking tired and pale, as if he hadn't slept all night. She begins to wonder if it was a dream where he was caring for her, or if it was all real. Remembering Esteban's caring touch, Mabel realizes that the one who stayed by her side all night was indeed the Emperor. This evokes mixed feelings and an unexpected thrill. Esteban, leaning over Mabel, quietly asks how she's feeling. The girl feels the warmth of his soft hand and his soothing voice, realizing how sincere and gentle he is with her. Mabel ponders why the Emperor cares so much about her. She begins to doubt her own worth and wonders if she deserves his love and care. Looking at Esteban, holding her in his arms, Mabel recalls her past life and the pain she's endured. This makes her wonder if those events have changed her heart. The pleasant scent of summer flowers wafts through the room. Carried by the breeze, Mabel savors the moment. But her peace is interrupted by the servant's request to close all the windows, which annoys her. Despite her cold, Mabel doesn't want to miss out on fresh air. Convincing herself that nothing bad will happen, she's sad that she can't afford a walk or freedom of choice. Esteban decides to remove all dangerous objects from Mabel's room, including her favorite doll. His overprotectiveness becomes irritating to her, but he's certain it's his way of protecting her. The servants continue to look after Mabel's safety, but she notices that their care has made her feel calmer. At that moment, Oscar appears, filling the room with new energy. Oscar enters the room with a smile, enjoying the coolness after the heat. He is warmly greeted by the nanny, who offers him refreshing tea. Politely thanking her, he heads to the sofa where Mabel is already waiting, looking at him impatiently. Mabel sits with Oscar and asks what interesting things they can do today. Meanwhile, she notices the arrival of another guest, Lisandro Donovan, whom she doesn't particularly like, but tolerates for the prince's sake. Mabel suddenly starts acting strange, jumping up and down with a cheerful meow, mimicking a cat. Lisandro, entering, watches with a smile, calling her a little princess, which amuses Oscar even more. Oscar picks up little Mabel and tries to explain that Lisandro isn't so bad after all. The girl, hurt by his words, only hugs her friend tighter, showing that she's ready to protect him from all enemies. Oscar recalls how Lisandro used to be kind and playful with him, but after becoming his mentor, he became strict. Despite this, he understands that Donovan only wants the best for him, trying to raise a worthy heir. Mabel decides it's her duty to protect Oscar from Lisandro's influence, remembering how he's changed. Suddenly, she's distracted by the books Oscar brought. Mabel looks at the stack with bewilderment and curiosity. The girl is surprised by the sheer number of books Oscar must read. She shares her opinion that so much assignment for one person is daunting. However, Oscar responds that he's interested in learning something new. Oscar opens one of the books and tries to read it. However, the text proves complex and incomprehensible. He reflects on how unfair it is that he has the ability to understand the world, but not the ability to read. Mabel, having discovered maps of the continents in a book, is fascinated by them. She happily shares her discovery with Oscar, causing him to momentarily forget his difficulties and simply enjoy the moment. Mabel notices that Oscar hadn't previously shown any interest in books, but maps have piqued his interest. Together, they immerse themselves in exploring the continents, creating an atmosphere of warmth, joy, and a carefree childhood. Oscar tells Mabel about the vast Hermano Empire where they live. He mentions its history, how it achieved power through conquest, and speaks of the neighboring Holy Kingdom of Abelardo, but quickly changes the subject, clearly hiding something. They examine the map, noting the neighboring countries, the kingdoms of Percy and Bargatha. Oscar impresses Mabel with his 6-year-old knowledge, and she feels a slight sense of embarrassment at her inexperience. Mabel is amazed that such a young child has such a good grasp of world geography. She begins to admire Oscar, recognizing his extraordinary mental abilities. While examining the map, Mabel notices the second-largest country. She asks about it, and Oscar names it the Devlin Empire, which causes her unexpected tension. The mention of Devlin conjures up images of a demon associated with this place. She recalls how the demon managed to escape and wonders if it has been recaptured. Oscar explains that the relationship between Ermino and Devlin is extremely tense. Devlin is always on the offensive, which is why the atmosphere becomes so tense whenever he's mentioned. He adds that even Montego from the Holy Kingdom views Devlin with suspicion. Despite the buffer of Abelardo, Hermano's northern border remains dangerous and prone to conflict. Oscar recalls a recent skirmish on the border in which Hermano's troops were annihilated. He heard rumors that it was the work of a single man. Mabel is stunned by this information, incredulous that one man could destroy an entire army. Her attention returns to the map, where Oscar confidently points out the location of the battle. Oscar laughs at her surprise, but admits he's only telling her all this to keep her occupied. Mabel insists she understands more than she thinks and is looking forward to more stories. Esteban invites Mabel to follow him in a simple exercise to develop her motor skills. He shows her how to stretch her arms and hold them in the correct position, but the girl feels limited aware of her youth. Mabel decides to play with Oscar, relishing her childhood. She feels joy in playing and interacting with the first prince, who delights her with his enthusiasm and support, helping her overcome her fears. A summer day brings a pleasant coolness. Mabel is 8 months old. Despite this, her parents are concerned about her lack of movement. The doctor assures her there are no other health problems. The parents discuss concerns about Mabel's condition, noting her developmental delays. However, the doctor believes the situation may be temporary and advises against panic. With growing awareness, Mabel begins to roll over on her own, albeit with some delay. She struggles but finds the strength to continue. Her parents begin to see hope. The latest medical results confirm Mabel's health. Her mother is delighted, but she can't shake off a feeling of worry, believing she's been paying too much attention to her immobility. Mabel debates whether to show her learning to roll over. She's afraid of comparing herself to other children and making mistakes, fearing she'll repeat the mistakes of the past. When night falls, Mabel is left alone and begins rigorous training, pushing herself to the limit. She views her work as a secret mission and exerts herself to the utmost. She understands that her work must remain secret, so she tries to work quietly so no one can hear her efforts, especially Esteban, who might be just outside the door. Despite her fatigue, Mabel remembers that even in difficult situations, such as the role of a future ruler, one must remain persistent. Esteban, holding her, makes it clear that he believes in her strength and future. Mabel, after a tremendous amount of effort, learns to cling to the crib railing. She feels proud of her first success, but soon realizes the hardest part is yet to come. Standing up. The girl motivates herself by remembering the joys of her past life, where she knew how to walk. She tries to rise, gripping the railing, but her movements are still hesitant, and her attempts are accompanied by baby talk. Mabel strains to get up, inspired. She makes one last push, and there she is! Overwhelmed with joy, she exclaims that she will be able to walk on her own. However, the joy gives way to realization. Only when she stands up does she realize she won't be able to run right away. Mabel looks at the world with a new delight, as if she's taking the first step in her life. Meanwhile, Esteban, quietly entering the room, notices her. He came to look at her sleeping face, but finds the girl awake, which surprises him. Noticing Esteban, Mabel accidentally falls, letting out a frightened cry. For a moment, she finds herself in his arms, overwhelmed by the unexpected attention. The girl ends up on the floor, making soft, childish noises. Esteban, standing by the door, watches her awkward attempts to explain herself, not immediately understanding what has happened. Mabel begins to ponder how to explain her actions. She fears that her too rapid development might seem strange and absurd, and she searches for an excuse. Suddenly, it dawns on her that she can't speak. Yet a plan to surprise Esteban by keeping everything a secret flashes through her mind, but she's too nervous to continue babbling. Esteban, looking at her, tells her he's proud of her. In his eyes, she's a true genius. Mabel feels her heart fill with warmth, knowing her efforts have been noticed. Mabel, a pink-haired girl, looks surprised when her father, Emperor Esteban, decides to celebrate her first step. The atmosphere is filled with emotion, as this moment is a significant one for him. The emperor looks at his daughter with pride and strives to share his joy. However, his impulse to action shocks Mabel. She doesn't understand what awaits her. He lifts her up as if preparing for something important. Mabel is overcome with excitement, but also fear. Esteban wants to give her something special to mark the occasion. His solemn determination fills the scene with anticipation. The emperor ponders the best gift for his daughter. Despite his majestic demeanor, he demonstrates his concern, trying to choose something unique and meaningful for her. Esteban offers the gift of the Duchy of Bastante. The offer is so grandiose that Mabel, stunned, tries to comprehend it, wondering what it means. Meanwhile, affairs of state are being discussed in the throne room. Esteban, maintaining his characteristic sternness, makes decisions that demonstrate his strength as a ruler. Advisors note a change in the emperor's mood. They notice his friendliness and easygoing demeanor, a departure from his usual serious demeanor. Esteban recalls witnessing his daughter's first steps. It was a happy moment for him, one that filled him with joy and pride in her development. Sitting on his throne, he reflects fondly on how fortunate he is to have such a charming daughter. He sees her early achievements as a source of joy that brightens his days. Mabel continues to master new skills, and her success brings happiness not only to the emperor, but also to the entire palace retinue. Her presence brings a vibrant and harmonious atmosphere to the castle. Emperor Esteban is proud of his daughter, who despite being only 8 months old is already walking. He admires her genius, anticipating how she will soon start calling him Daddy. To commemorate this momentous occasion, Esteban decides to give his daughter a gift, the entire Principality of Bastante. This decision causes surprise and confusion among the courtiers. The Marquis expresses doubts. The Principality of Bastante is a strategically important territory, and it makes more sense to pass it on to the heir, not to the 8-month-old princess. His opinion is supported by political arguments. The emperor's reaction astonishes everyone. When challenged that it was a joke, he calmly replies that his decision is entirely serious. The atmosphere in the hall grows tense. Given that Bastante is the emperor's personal property, no one can challenge his decision. Everyone accepts that the principality will pass to the princess despite her age. The courtiers discuss how the large-scale gift will affect the princess's future birthday celebrations, predicting something grand and unprecedented. The intrigue is further heightened by the fact that many have yet to see the princess in person. Her upcoming debut is generating intense anticipation and a desire to witness her first official appearance. The emperor concludes the meeting, deciding it's time to visit his daughter. He imagines how much she has missed him and looks forward to meeting her. He is suddenly distracted by the appearance of the Marquise. He smirks and tries to attract Esteban's attention, hinting at something significant that requires immediate discussion. Esteban reflects with a slight weariness on how long it's been quiet. He recalls how, ever since his daughter's birth, the Marquise has constantly bothered him, and now he brings his worries again. The Marquise worriedly mentions that Mabel is already 8 months old and wants to see her. However, Esteban reminds him that she's still too young. The Marquise insists, claiming that she's already started walking, revealing his anxiety. Esteban recalls His Majesty's words, which underscore the gravity of the situation. He speculates that Mabel could become the heir to the Marquise of Gardenia, but adds that this has not yet been finalized. Esteban gloomily contemplates how the Marquise and others are searching for a way to take Mabel. He firmly resolves not to give the girl up, calling her his daughter, but understanding the necessity, he agrees to one meeting to end further arguments. Esteban recalls the Marquise's past anger when he told him about his wedding with Shiana. Reflecting on this, he notices that the situation itself irritates him. Discontent and tense moments from the past surface in his memory. Mabel's scream echoes throughout the palace, drawing attention. The staff notices the girl standing up, marveling at her progress. They admire her attempts to walk, touched by her persistence and the playful steps. Mabel, having overheard, thinks the emperor must have told everyone about her progress. However, she decides she can practice walking freely. She tries to move despite her still weak balance. The woman orders her servants to watch Mabel while she's gone. Mabel tries to stand again, and the servants enthusiastically help her, delighted to be a part of her first steps. Mabel is starting to tire, but she sees how much the servants enjoy her activity. She decides to continue the game to please them. They all have a great time together as the girl persistently tries new steps. Nanny admonishes the servants for their appearance, and Mabel notices their embarrassment. Her gaze is full of curiosity and slight anxiety, but she focuses on her efforts to move forward, overcoming difficulties with a smile. Mabel sees an unfamiliar couple, a stern man with a cane and an elegant woman. The girl is perplexed as to who these people standing behind the nanny are. Her gaze is drawn to the stern man, who exudes an air of mystery. The man stares at Mabel, and her heart sinks. She doesn't understand why his gaze evokes such powerful emotions. She feels a sense of familiarity, as if she had just met someone important. A nurse appears in the hall and calms the child. She greets the guest, addressing him as the Marquise of Gardenia. The mention of the title prompts Mabel to reflect on the meaning of the name and its connection to her family. Mabel turns to get a better look at the Marquis. Her gaze falls on his poise and stern features. She guesses that if his name is Gardenia, he might be part of her family. The Marquis steps forward and, placing his hand on his chest, introduces himself. He says he's meeting Her Majesty Princess Mabel for the first time and explains that he's her grandfather. Mabel is shocked by the revelation. Realizing what she heard, the girl was surprised. Grandfather? Her thoughts were confused. She tried to comprehend what had just happened. The realization that it was her grandfather standing before her brought a warm feeling to her heart. The man, touched by the girl's words, admires her growth. He notes that Mabel is already walking and understands many things. The girl is embarrassed, but feels her grandfather's words fill her with confidence. Mabel's grandfather's reaction suddenly reminds her of someone else, triggering a sense of déjà vu. She can't understand why this encounter feels simultaneously new and familiar. Meanwhile, Esteban the Emperor sits at his desk. His gaze is fixed on the door, his thoughts focused on Mabel. His secretary is surprised by the ruler's absent-mindedness. Esteban guesses that the reason for his excitement lies in the fact that the princess was meeting her maternal grandfather for the first time. He acknowledges the significance of this meeting and its impact on their family. Emperor Esteban reflects on the people who want to take his daughter Mabel. He recalls the two villains with anger and tries to figure out how to protect her. He worries about their motives and possible plans. Esteban wearily returns to his office, where his assistant Gustavo asks why the emperor, so worried, won't visit his daughter. However, Esteban refuses, fearing he'll look foolish. Gustav tries to reassure the emperor, saying he couldn't look any worse. Esteban, in turn, ponders his fears, his thoughts full of contradictions. Gustavo gently hints that Mabel might want to see her father herself. Esteban doesn't believe it at first, but hope creeps into his heart. Gustavo successfully reassures him with a joke, eliciting a slight smile. Emotionally worried about his daughter, Esteban wonders about her feelings. Gustavo assures him that Mabel loves him very much, but Esteban himself remains doubtful, wondering what's going on in her head. A sudden surge of gratitude overwhelms Esteban, and he sincerely praises Gustav. Gustav is surprised by such a positive reaction, but accepts it, smiling shyly in return. Esteban decides to entrust everything to Gustavo so he can meet Mabel. However, he suddenly feels he's been duped. This realization evokes mixed emotions. Esteban, remembering his love and care for Mabel, realizes that life is full of difficulties. He would like to have her by his side as long as possible, but he feels responsible for her happiness. Deeply distressed, the emperor realizes that his opinions weren't always taken into account. However, he decides that it is his duty to support Mabel despite his inner fears. He looks at her sweet face and realizes that for her sake, he is ready to face any challenge. The warmth in his heart gives him strength, and he firmly resolves to stay by her side as long as he can. Mabel meets Emperor Esteban. She notices his tears, which have only recently dried, and understands how deeply he has suffered. Esteban is surprised by her words of comfort, and those around her support the girl. The story takes us back in time to the story of Mabel's mother, Xiana, the most beautiful woman in the empire. The emperor was captivated by her and proposed to her, changing their destinies. The emperor is remembered as a cold and cruel heir who valued human lives no more than coin. His reputation as the worst monarch has haunted him to this day. Despite his past, Esteban changed for the love of Xiana. His feelings were so sincere that even the girl's father, initially opposed, relented. After Xiana's death, Esteban takes charge of Mabel, his only remaining family. He separates her from her grandfather to protect her, a move many consider cruel. Mabel reflects on her difficulty seeing Esteban as family, but she understands his loneliness. She tries to understand his actions and motives. Esteban tries to mend his relationship with Mabel. Despite his stern features, he sees in the girl a memory of Xian and strives to be closer. Mistrust develops between Mabel's grandfather and Esteban. The grandfather notices the emperor's desire to care for the girl, and albeit reluctantly, acknowledges his efforts. Esteban's sudden appearance frightens Mabel, but she decides to remain brave. Esteban, showing his concern, invites her to return to her grandfather. Mabel begins to understand that behind Esteban's stern facade lies a man full of love and regret. She feels an important part of his world, accepting her role in his life. A little girl with pink hair, Mabel ponders why the Marquise is deciding to hand her over to the emperor, and she greets the moment with trepidation. Emperor Esteban responds by entering, majestically plunging everyone into an atmosphere of tension. The emperor, addressing the Marquis, imperiously orders him to rise. A tense tension erupts between the men. Mabel feels the atmosphere escalate to breaking point, and she can't understand what's happening. The tension escalates into a silent conflict, and Mabel realizes this is a clash between father-in-law and son-in-law. Her anxiety grows, and she internally protests not wanting to be drawn into this argument. Mabel decides to flee, but her desperate attempts to avoid the men's confrontation are unsuccessful. She hides at the Marquise's, hoping to find protection there, but it's no use. The girl decides to seek a nanny as her only refuge. In her naive hope, she feels that only there can she find safety. Her attempts to evacuate seem humorous, yet touching. Esteban appears just as the nanny is meeting him. The nanny is shocked by his presence, looking up with respect and surprise. Mabel watches in confusion, not understanding the meaning of the scene. Suddenly, everyone freezes, and Mabel notices it's because of her. Her agility and speed amaze everyone around her. She proudly relishes the moment, proving she's capable of more. The father and the emperor begin arguing over whose blood she is. Each believes Mabel's athletic and intellectual qualities are their own doing. Their rivalry begins to seem pointless and comical. Mabel, observing the conflict, wonders why they're arguing and quietly decides to use this moment to escape. She stealthily makes her way to her nanny, hoping for a cozy hideout. As they both reach out to the girl, Mabel finds herself the center of attention. Escaping the argument, she decides for herself who to trust, proving she can make decisions despite her young age. Mabel ponders the complexities of her choices, realizing that every step she takes could lead to trouble. Her despair breaks through tears, but even at this moment, she understands that tears will not solve her difficulties. Oscar suddenly appears, joyfully calling her, telling her of an important door that has opened for her. This moment awakens hope in Mabel's heart, and she feels she can be supported. Oscar confidently steps forward, demonstrating that he knows the way. Mabel, looking at him, decides to take action, because there is a better way to deal with difficulties than simply mourning them. Oscar gives Mabel a warm hug, apologizing for the slight delay. He admits he's been busy with his studies, but he'll always make time for her. This fills her with gratitude. As events unfold, a serious charge against Montego is uncovered. An assassination attempt on a member of the imperial family. His patience is exhausted, and he delivers a harsh verdict. Montego is banished from Hermano's empire forever. He sadly realizes his life has changed dramatically, but is grateful to be alive, albeit under difficult circumstances. Emperor Esteban suddenly stops Montego, asking him a crucial question about the divine seed. This moment makes Montego realize the gravity of his failure. Realizing the mission has failed, Montego accepts his fate. His inner despair is palpable, but he realizes that excuses won't help. Esteban sternly expresses his opinion, claiming he never expected Montego to succeed. His words are merciless, leaving Montego feeling helpless. Realizing he hasn't lived up to expectations, Montego reflects on how he got to this point. He can only accept the consequences of his actions and acknowledge his mistakes. The mysterious man wonders if others understand his actions. He explains that he sent a servant to Hermano to test how effectively they were protecting God's seed. They're viewing it as preparation for something greater. A man discusses plans to return God's seed to Abelardo. He calls it a rehearsal and shares his thoughts. His interlocutor agrees, demonstrating an awareness of the importance of what is happening. The handsome, fair-haired man acknowledges that the other's behavior may be unpleasant, but he's not surprised. He confidently asserts that he has a clear plan, smiling an enigmatic smile. The man's plans are shrouded in mystery, but his faith in success is unshakable. The other man listens attentively, admitting he understands everything. The atmosphere grows tense but remains calm. The fair-haired man turns out to be Saint King Michael Abelardo. Only members of his family can hold this title. He rarely appears in public, preferring to act through confidants. His appearance is shrouded in legend. People imagine him as an elderly old man, but in reality, he has an angelic appearance. His true age remains a mystery, adding to his aura of mystery. A beautiful appearance doesn't always reveal one's inner essence. The hero reflects on his ignorance of what this person is like on the inside, emphasizing the complexity and multi-layered nature of their character. Little Mabel, a girl with pink hair, suddenly starts crying. She's worried about pain, and those around her are trying to figure out what's wrong. The atmosphere is filled with concern and anxiety. Despite her tears, the nanny laughs, explaining that the pain is due to Mabel's teething. The girl trusted her, but now she feels betrayed, heightening the drama. The other servants report that Mabel is crying. Nanny explains the reason, describing the situation with a slight smile. Despite the pain, everyone understands that this is only a temporary phase. Mabel, a charming little girl with pink hair, lies in the arms of her nanny, who smiles and tells her she'll soon have teeth. The girl joyfully perceives this as a great event and begins to dream of growing up. Her thoughts wander to fantasies of how teething will allow her to begin speaking clearly. She sees this as an important milestone that will make her stronger and closer to adults. The nanny announces that they need to prepare for an important event, the arrival of Emperor Esteban. The girl is surprised that news of her teeth reached him and doesn't believe he'll actually come. Mabel is experiencing teething pain. Her nanny comforts her, telling her it's a natural part of growing up. The girl perseveres, recognizing that this is proof of her growth. The nanny praises Mabel for her patience and resilience, noting that even in moments of pain, she tries not to cry. Those present are amazed at her courage, as the girl remains sweet even in difficult times. Esteban suddenly appears with a loud cry, causing everyone around him to be surprised. His sudden appearance serves as a powerful accent to the importance of the moment. The emperor smiles and declares that Mabel's teething is a national holiday. She realizes that Esteban is closely observing her life and noticing even such small details. Esteban ponders what gift to give Mabel to celebrate her achievement. The girl tenses, sensing that the gift might be unexpected or strange. The emperor enthusiastically suggests sweets as the perfect gift for a child. He believes it's especially appropriate for such a significant occasion as the appearance of a tooth. Mabel is aware of how much attention and care she receives from those around her. Despite difficult moments, her life is filled with warmth, and even small things, like her teeth, brighten her days. Esteban, full of enthusiasm, tells Mabel about his gift, a chef who will prepare sweets for her. However, the girl is disappointed, as she was expecting the sweets themselves, not the person. A huge man appears before Mabel, revealing himself to be the cook. She is outraged and unable to hide her disappointment, while those around her look at her in surprise. Word reaches the emperor. He receives a message from Abelardo. Esteban learns that the Holy King Michael wishes to attend the banquet in honor of Mabel's first birthday, which arouses suspicion. Esteban immediately orders a reply letter prepared. Tired of surprises, he realizes the message may contain a threat, but decides to act without delay. Esteban's inner reflections reveal his tension. He realizes that Abelardo's actions may be a declaration of war, but this gives him a reason to protect his daughter. Now, Esteban has a new purpose: to protect Mabel as his own daughter. He decides to respond harshly to demonstrate his position. Esteban finishes his letter and hands it to his servant. He's confident that his response will set the right tone for his future relationship with Abelardo. One of the servants is surprised by the straightforwardness of Esteban's answer. The emperor confirms that there is no need for unnecessary ceremony, as he has 2 months before the banquet. Esteban understands that Michael's visit is an event of great importance. The identity of the Holy King is hidden, and this causes particular tension in the empire. They begin to prepare. The atmosphere becomes festive. The entire palace is preparing for Mabel's first birthday. Footsteps are heard outside the door, and Esteban eagerly anticipates the day ahead. Mabel, a baby with pink hair and blue eyes, senses the tension around her. The sound of footsteps outside the door hints at the importance of the moment. The atmosphere is filled with anticipation. It's her first birthday after all. The nanny lifts Mabel into her arms with a smile, preparing for the upcoming event. The girl watches the adults with interest, sensing the excitement. Her presence brightens the room with joy. Mabel sees her reflection in the mirror for the first time. Her large blue eyes study themselves curiously. She is amazed and enchanted by her appearance, relishing the moment of recognition of her own uniqueness. She ponders her appearance lightly, touching her hair and face. Embarrassment and pride overwhelm her. For little Mabel, this is a new and exciting experience, revealing the world around her. Realizing she's cute, Mabel begins to become aware of how others react. She notices that her hair is different from everyone else's, prompting reflection on her appearance and place in the world. Smiling, Mabel shares her discovery with the nannies. Her large eyes are compared to those of an emperor, and she already has 4 teeth, which brings a smile to everyone present. They say the mirror was kept out of her room for a long time for fear of breaking it. Now, having returned it, the adults are delighted by Mabel's reaction to her reflection. She's called to try on a special dress prepared for the celebration. The atmosphere becomes even more festive. Mabel looks at the outfit with interest, believing it's meant for her. For her, who grew up poor in a previous life, a luxurious dress seems unattainable. She feels awe at the prospect of such a gift, trying to figure out how to handle it. She's tenderly dressed, completing the preparations for the holiday. Mabel feels like part of a fairy tale where everything is for her. Her first birthday becomes a magical moment in her life. The young woman gazes tenderly at Mabel, admiring her pink hair, comparing it to the Empress's. The girl realizes she inherited her hair color from her mother, lost in warm thoughts. Mabel ponders how to react to stories about her mother. She feels mixed emotions as such. Moments evoke both joy and confusion within her. The servants sincerely admire Mabel, calling her incredibly sweet. The atmosphere brightens, and the girl enjoys the attention and care of those around her, albeit a little embarrassed. One of the servants wanting to hug Mabel is reprimanded for risking wrinkling her beautiful dress. Everyone laughs, and the tension gives way to lightness and joy. Esteban appears, turning to Mabel with a kind and attentive gaze. The girl notices that he looks different, solemn, and a little unusual. Esteban lifts Mabel into his arms, wishing her a happy birthday. For the first time in her life, the girl hears such warm words, which fills her with genuine joy and surprise. Mabel recalls her past when birthdays passed unnoticed. Her heart fills with new, unfamiliar feelings from the attention she receives. Esteban, carrying Mabel, heads into the opulent hall where the important event is about to begin. The grandeur of the setting heightens the sense of significance of the moment. When asked about another participant in the celebration, it turns out he has already gone into the hall with the Duchess. The atmosphere becomes even more solemn, and anticipation for the celebration mounts. The young man watching the scene unfold experiences intense emotion. His state evokes sympathy from those around him, emphasizing how significant this day is for everyone. Esteban stands thoughtfully next to Mabel, who considers him the worst boss ever. She notes his unpredictability and unusual behavior, which causes concern among those around him. Esteban and another character approach the palace's enormous doors. He announces their arrival, creating the impression that something important awaits them beyond those doors. Mabel is extremely nervous and anxious. She's terrified of the many people who are surely waiting for her outside the door, and their stares make her extremely nervous. Esteban notices that Mabel looks ill and tries to calm her down with concern. He assures her there's nothing to be afraid of and puts an arm around her to support her through this difficult moment. Esteban explains to Mabel that she doesn't need to pay attention to others or look at those around her. He tries to ease her tension, which calms her somewhat despite her inner fear. Esteban prepares for the important announcement. Mabel, though still nervous, gathers her strength, sensing that the moment for which everything has been arranged is near. Mabel notices how everything suddenly becomes silent and realizes that all eyes in the room are on her. Her attention is drawn to the throne, which seems intended for her. She sees extra chairs next to the throne and wonders if they're meant for her and someone else. The tension intensifies, but she tries to hold on. Mabel carefully sits down on the throne, still unsure why she's been given this seat. Questions about her role and the reason for such a solemn setting arise in her mind. Esteban calls everyone to look up and introduces Mabel as his daughter. This announcement shocks her as she clearly wasn't expecting such a grand admission. Little Mabel, with pink hair and blue eyes, sits on the throne confused. She doesn't understand why she's the center of attention. Her hesitation raises eyebrows among those around her, including Prince Oscar. The people around Mabel seem amazed. They admire her eyes full of purity and innocence. Mabel is confused by what's happening and mentally tries to understand how she ended up in this situation. Esteban, the emperor, appears. His majestic figure emphasizes the contrast between the adult world and the little girl sitting on the throne. He jokingly mentions her abilities, which astound everyone. The courtiers discuss the situation, and her closest aides confirm Mabel truly has special talents. Her self-confidence is mixed with awkwardness. She wants to disappear, but events continue. Mysterious messengers appear at the reception. Mabel intuitively understands their danger. Her tension mounts when she realizes their goals may be connected to her. Esteban assures Mabel of her safety. He tells her that the attackers who tried to kidnap her will not appear again. Mabel is relieved, feeling safe with him. Mabel reflects that everything will be different now. She believes that under Esteban's protection, no one will be able to kidnap her. This thought brings her peace, despite the surrounding chaos. Esteban turns to Mabel with a sincere smile. His kind words warm her heart. In that moment, their connection becomes clear to everyone present. Oscar joins in the congratulations. His words full of admiration delight Mabel. She thanks him, and his sincerity makes the moment even more touching. Esteban tenderly wishes Mabel a happy birthday. This becomes the culmination of her day, full of surprises. Their warm conversation completes the atmosphere of joy and love around her. Emperor Esteban shares with Mabel that he wanted to congratulate her earlier, but her father insisted he do so first. The girl looks slightly perplexed, while Esteban's outburst seems touchingly childish. Oscar, smiling confidently, declares that he will be the first to give her a gift, clearly competing with the emperor. Esteban reacts with mild surprise, but remains unperturbed. Oscar hands Mabel an elegant pendant, which immediately captivates her. She looks at it with curiosity and admiration, and her sincere gaze fills the atmosphere with warmth. Oscar explains it's a gift for her first birthday. Mabel is genuinely happy and thanks him, her tenderness and sincerity softening their hearts. Oscar smiles proudly, pleased with her reaction. Esteban, holding Mabel in his arms, informs her that the other gifts are also meant for her. The girl is slightly embarrassed, unsure how to react to such attention. Her gaze falls on a huge mountain of presents decorated like a Christmas tree. Mabel is stunned by their number. She can't believe they're all for her. Tension reigns among the guests. The gifts were brought voluntarily. People conceal their displeasure, their forced smiles and cold gazes, making Mabel feel slightly uneasy. The girl reflects on how burdensome all of this is. She experiences internal conflict, feeling uncomfortable about a situation for which she was not prepared. Esteban notices her nervousness and rushes to dispel her doubts. He confidently reminds her that he has something special in store for her and promises a surprise. Mabel feels someone's gaze on her. The hooded stranger makes her wary, and she turns around, trying to figure out who he is. Mystery hangs in the air. At Mabel's birthday ceremony, Esteban makes a surprise announcement. Taking her hand, he utters touching words full of meaning. Everyone present is stunned by the moment. Esteban bows solemnly to little Mabel, and with unusual seriousness, tells her that he is giving her a country. The girl looks at him in surprise, not comprehending the magnitude of what she has just heard. The thought flashes through her mind that this incredible statement is just a dream. Mabel feels reality becoming shaky and tries to comprehend what she has heard. Her mind is overwhelmed with emotion. The improbability of what's happening seems like an illusion. A crown appears before her eyes, as if a symbol of confirmation of the emperor's words, but she still doubts. The emperor announces he is abdicating the throne in favor of Mabel. His face expresses solemn satisfaction, but the girl's reaction is one of stunned surprise. She can't hide her surprise and exclaims. Mabel panics as she realizes that the weight of the entire country now rests on her shoulders. She struggles internally with her emotions as those around her watch in awe. The conspirators discuss their plan. One of them, seated with a confident air, mentions their divine right. They seek to exploit Mabel for their own ends, which raises concerns for her future. Esteban watches events unfold, preparing to confront his enemies. His tension mounts, but he remains determined to protect Mabel, even if it leads to conflict. The Marquis tries to object to Esteban's decision to make Mabel empress. His confusion is obvious, but the emperor is confident in his choice and refuses to allow anyone to doubt it. Esteban sees letters from his enemies and ponders how to get rid of the threat. He decides to find a way to prevent anyone from ever jeopardizing Mabel's safety again. The Marquis indignantly declares that he will not allow anyone to take his granddaughter. He is confident that the support of an influential ally will protect his rights. His determination commands respect. After speaking with the Marquis, Esteban considers his next step. He is focused and confident in his actions, determined to carry out his plan. Oscar appears before his father. Despite his young age, he holds himself with remarkable dignity, demonstrating the maturity his position demands. The discussion of how strict lessons and pressure made Oscar so reserved sheds light on the difficulties he experienced under his tutelage. Esteban starts a conversation with his son. He asks if he truly wants to become emperor, but the boy's eyes betray uncertainty, which raises his father's doubts. Oscar admits he's unsure of his own desire. The idea of becoming emperor was forced upon him, and he's trying to live up to those around him, even though he's unsure if he wants to. Esteban realizes his son was not given a choice. The throne has become a burden imposed on Oscar by his parents' will, which he obediently accepts as the meaning of life. However, the boy doesn't feel free to act his own way. He recognizes his limitations, realizing that he can't do only what he wants or avoid what he dislikes. Esteban decides to abandon his plans to pass the throne to his son for Mabel's sake, so that she will be protected. He sincerely wants to hear Oscar's opinion on his intentions. Oscar agrees with his father's decision. The scene ends the episode with a sense of mutual understanding and budding hope for a new path. Esteban tense tries to persuade Oscar to make an important decision, but emphasizes that it's his choice alone. Oscar reflects and realizes that he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep Mela safe. Realizing the importance of his role, Oscar decides to become a knight to protect Mela. His determination and sincere desire shine in his eyes, creating a moment full of hope and inspiration. Against the golden light of the tea, Esteban, lost in thought, agrees to the action, but doesn't hide his inner surprise at Oscar's decision. He realizes how different the young prince is from his expectations. Esteban recognizes Oscar's talent, his ability to learn quickly, and his desire to surpass the emperor himself. He notes that the young prince is much stronger than he appears, and this fills him with admiration. During a conversation with one of his advisors, Esteban wonders, did Oscar really say he didn't want to become emperor? This surprises him, and he reflects on Mela's decision to entrust Oscar's upbringing to Lisandro. Reflecting on his loved ones, Esteban acknowledges that Mela understands Oscar better than anyone else. However, he realizes that the youngest princess will have a hard time handling political affairs without his help. The advisors discuss how even a young princess could prove better than the fickle emperor. However, they are confident that all the real work will remain Esteban's and agree to support his decision. One by one, everyone agrees with Esteban's plans, acknowledging his wisdom and strength. However, Esteban wonders how others will react when the true state of affairs is revealed. A dark anger grips Esteban when he realizes someone has dared to lay claim to his daughter. His rage grows, transforming his emotions into a determination to protect his family. At the end of the scene, Mela appears, her red eyes sparkling and her face filled with confidence. She makes it clear that no one can take her daughter away, emphasizing her strength and determination. The Marquis, addressing Mabel, calls her by name, and suddenly announces that he is abdicating the throne in her favor. This shocks those present, their faces expressing surprise and confusion. The crowd begins asking questions, trying to figure out why this decision was made. One man is perplexed by what's going on. Another is unsure whether this should be taken seriously. The tension mounts. Some of those present discuss the incident, wondering why Duchess Donovan seems so unconcerned about this decision. Amidst the discussion, a realization dawns that the situation is unpredictable. Elsewhere, the assembled church representatives discuss the fact that they will now be unable to take the princess back to Abelardo. They ponder the justice of this current state of affairs, recognizing its gravity. Church officials are coming to the conclusion that they can't do anything for now. They are constrained by the current situation, and they are forced to wait to avoid making matters worse. At the same time, they realize that the princess's tiny body harbors a powerful holy power. If they wait until she awakens, everything will fall into place, and the situation will resolve itself. A sense of confidence sets in that there's no need to worry about what to do next. After all, sooner or later, everything will be resolved, and there will be no more cause for concerns. The church decides to temporarily retreat, realizing that it is currently impossible to change the outcome of events. Some representatives express dissatisfaction but are forced to agree. One of the clergy declares that attempting to intervene is futile, as the Marquise abdicated in favor of the princess to stop their plans. When asked about their next steps, doubt arises as to whether they even have a plan. The high-ranking clergywoman, smiling, replies that she had a plan, but now everything has changed. This enigmatic smile makes everyone wonder about her hidden intentions. A mysterious figure dressed in a white cloak attracts the crowd's attention, eliciting whispers and confusion. Her confidence leaves those around her stunned as she asserts her point of view, dismissing any criticism. Young Mabel, her gaze tender, listens to the words about how she will one day blossom. These words bring hope and inspiration, emphasizing her hidden potential, which will be revealed in the future. The scene shifts to a red staircase in a divine temple. A mysterious voice promises that having gained strength, Mabel will find her own path striving toward a great goal illuminated by golden lights. The expressive smile of the figure in white emphasizes Mabel's uniqueness. This man claims that her unique ability to drive those around her crazy is a gift that must be fully realized. Emperor Esteban, watching the scene, experiences conflicting emotions. His face reflects suppressed disappointment, as if he had expected more. His reaction seems cold and reserved. Esteban considers how perhaps by raising a ruckus, he could raise the question of diplomatic exile. However, he decides he's said all he can and lets it go. His attention shifts to caring for Mabel. He holds the girl in his arms, reminding himself that she is his responsibility and that he must ensure her future no matter the difficulties. Esteban, worried about Mabel's health, wonders how she will react to the events. However, he understands that at her young age, she is not yet capable of grasping the gravity of the situation. Mabel suddenly realizes her fate and screams in shock. Her emotions are vivid, her eyes wide, and her words emphasize her confusion and fear of her new responsibilities. Esteban, hearing her cry, calls out her name with emotion. His gaze reflects sudden anxiety and the realization that caring for Mabel is demanding more of him than he imagined. Esteban, dressed in imperial robes, is having an unfortunate encounter. He's sharply called a fool, and the atmosphere becomes tense. He hangs his head in tension, lost in thought. A woman in a pink dress rushes toward him, anxiously asking what's wrong. She's clearly surprised and alarmed, and her manner belies Esteban's high status. Esteban's disappointment deepens. He mentally reminds those around him that he's only just turned 1 year old. This fact underscores his youth, despite the burden of his responsibilities. Mabel recalls her childhood with Esteban. His care manifested in simple moments, like comforting her, concerned about her tears, adding a softness to his image. Mabel's recollections continue. Esteban, from an early age, strived to live up to his role as heir, devoting himself to learning and self-improvement. These efforts evoke both respect and sadness in her. News spreads throughout the palace that the princess is crying. Spectators whisper, condemning her emotions. But this only highlights Mabel's loneliness and inner struggle. Esteban feels an injustice. The country has fallen into the hands of a child, and everyone around him silently accepts it. His anger and impotence are palpable despite his outward restraint. He orders the woman in the pink dress to leave the scene with Mabel. This moment underscores his responsibility for his sister's well-being. Mabel lies in bed, reflecting on the events of the past. She admits to having cried a lot and feels tired and depressed, which makes her image more vulnerable. In her thoughts, Mabel questions her role. Why was she elevated to the throne if she hadn't yet been crowned? These doubts underscore her confusion and disorientation. The Marquis, looking thoughtfully at little Mabel, sees in her the heir to the Marquisate. Given his complex relationship with the Emperor, he understands that this could lead to further conflicts. His face reflects concern. The man notices Emperor Esteban's strange calm the day before. His gaze conceals suspicion, as this cold calculation could foreshadow something important and unexpected. Esteban and Duchess Donovan look on with apparent indifference. Mabel, though small, feels the pressure of those around her as their conversations concern her future. At the ceremony, surrounded by tense faces, Mabel feels fear and danger. Her thoughts fill with panic. It's as if everyone is conspiring against her, and this frightens her more than anything. Waking in terror, Mabel screams, frightened by nightmares. Her inner world is shattered by the images she saw, and those around her try to understand what is happening. The servants try to console the crying girl, but their efforts seem awkward. Mabel bursts into tears, and those around her wonder what exactly is troubling the child so much. They recall Mabel crying all day yesterday. Her mood today is even more incomprehensible, and the absence of an important figure nearby only intensifies her anger. Reflecting on children's unpredictability, the adults try to find a way to approach little Mabel. She in turn whispers something unintelligible, but it clearly expresses her hurt. With anger in her eyes, Mabel clutches the sheet in her hands. She struggles with her emotions, experiencing a surge of anger at everyone she feels is to blame for her misfortunes. Mabel, seeing an imaginary Esteban sitting on the throne with a smug smile, decides that directing her anger at him is the right thing to do. Her resolve hardens. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, surprises everyone by saying the word "daddy." For the first time, her parents react with awe and excitement, discussing what she means by it. A smile lights up the woman's face when she realizes Mabel is indeed trying to call the Emperor "daddy." This sparks a surge of emotion, and those around her begin to speculate about her sweet intention. A servant informs the woman that the Emperor is in the dining room. Thanking him, she prepares to meet him, holding Mabel, as if planning ahead how to introduce the girl to the Emperor. Against the backdrop of sunset, Mabel expresses her determination to achieve her goal. To meet the Emperor, she's determined to prove something important, even if it seems difficult for someone her age. With fiery determination, Mabel clings to her mother, as if preparing for an important meeting. Her mother bolsters her confidence, preparing her for the moment that could change their future. Step by step, supported by her mother, Mabel learns to walk. Their joy intensifies as she takes several confident but laborious steps forward, getting ever closer to her goal. One word keeps spinning in the girl's head: Emperor. Her serious gaze reflects her small but powerful desire to make him notice her. She is determined. Focused, Mabel continues to walk. Each step is an expression of her strong character, and her eyes sparkle with the desire to finally meet the one she wants to call her father. Upon seeing the Emperor, Mabel rushes forward with fury and determination, forcing everyone around her to pay attention. She does everything in her power to achieve what she wants. Coming closer, the girl stands firmly on her feet. The Emperor, surprised by her determination, looks at her. All that remains is for her to prove that her presence at his side matters. Mabel, seeing Esteban, cried out joyfully and called him "Daddy," which touched him deeply. The moment filled the space with warmth and light, as if happiness itself had descended upon the earth. Esteban approached Mabel with a broad smile, playfully asking if she missed him. But her response was decisive and emotional. She expressed her disagreement, punctuated by humorous punches. Esteban, suppressing his laughter, decided that since Mabel was so insistent, he couldn't help but come. He hugged her tenderly, emphasizing that caring for her was his responsibility. Mabel considered her futile attempt to stab him. She sadly concluded that Esteban's body was too strong for her efforts. Esteban humorously remarked that he should give Mabel a gift that would please her. In response, she thoughtfully uttered the word "revenge," but realized her strength was clearly insufficient. Mabel, watching Esteban, realized that, as an adult, he had access to everything, including his favorite ice cream. She felt a slight twinge of envy, reflecting on her adult consciousness in a child's body. Esteban called Mabel by name and offered her some ice cream. The girl, initially surprised, quickly agreed, and the sweet treat brought her genuine joy. The taste of the ice cream delighted Mabel, and she greedily savored every bite. At that moment, she felt incredibly happy, as if returning to childhood. Esteban asked her with a smile if she liked the ice cream and if she wanted more. Mabel nodded affirmatively, continuing to enjoy the dessert with genuine joy. But Mabel soon remembered that her visit wasn't about the treat. She reflected on her original purpose, wondering how ice cream had distracted her from the main thing. Mabel realized with chagrin that she had succumbed to temptation like a child, and her temper was showing, her fist clenched in self-disappointment, and her mood visibly worsened. The emotionally charged moment continues when someone calls her name. Mabel looks around with obvious irritation, ready to take her frustration out on those around her. She cries out angrily that her father is not like that. Her large blue eyes are full of tears and despair, heightening the tension of the moment. Esteban, clearly surprised by her words, asks again. The atmosphere grows tense as those around them begin to recognize the hidden problems in their relationship. Mabel responds sharply, directing all her anger and frustration at Esteban. His shock at her behavior makes the situation even more dramatic. Unable to contain her emotions, she continues to scream at him to leave. Her small hands are shaking, and it's clear she's on the verge of a breakdown. Esteban tries to figure out what's going on. His voice softens, but Mabel remains firm in her position, pushing away his attempts to get closer. Raising her voice, she again emphasizes her dissatisfaction, and those around her begin to eavesdrop on what is happening, surprised by her harshness. Esteban, showing patience, promises to return later. However, Mabel remains intransigent and stubbornly insists on her own way. Esteban leaves the room, and his confidants discuss what happened. The atmosphere around Esteban is tense, as everyone understands his daughter's deep anger toward him. During a tense conversation, Mabel utters her name with a haughty smile, declaring that Esteban is now on her unloved list. The emotional atmosphere escalates, hinting at their complicated relationship. Esteban, outraged by her words, reacts with a burst of anger, calling her behavior madness. His tense expression underscores his internal conflict and the growing complexity of their interaction. Esteban leaves the room in a state of deep disappointment. He remembers how, after each of their meetings, Mabel would angrily chase him away, causing him only pain and sadness. Mabel sits in her room, lost in thought. She realizes that simply banishing the emperor won't solve the problem. She ponders how to find a way to change the situation. A smiling Oscar enters the room, greeting Mabel. His friendly tone and positive mood contrast with her dark thoughts, adding a brighter moment to the story. Esteban tenderly explains to Mabel that despite her desire not to become empress, he is forced to make a decision for her safety. He regrets it, but believes it is best for her. Mabel, small and innocent, tries to comprehend his words, looking at him with bewilderment. Esteban sadly adds that this is necessary for her protection. His bright yellow eyes express a mixture of anxiety and determination. It's a difficult decision, but he's convinced it's the right step for her future. Reflecting on her words, Esteban suddenly realizes that Mabel has her own understanding of the world. Her childish poitis, which he interprets as sorry, touches him. He smiles, realizing how difficult it can be to communicate with a child. Mabel, in turn, smiles back at him, telling him he has nothing to apologize for. Her pink hair and radiant smile make the moment warm and sincere, making it clear she appreciates his concern. Esteban admits that he himself wanted her to become empress. He reflects on her education and expresses confidence that her efforts were not in vain. Her upbringing is preparing her for a great future, even if she doesn't yet realize it. He shares that his younger sister will eventually take the throne, and his role is to prepare Mabel for her destiny. He's genuinely worried that he won't be able to be there if something goes wrong. Esteban unexpectedly reveals that he never sought power himself. He's glad he can stay by Mabel's side and help her. His words are filled with sincerity, and he hugs her tightly as if promising to be there. Mabel, though small, listens attentively. She looks at him with trust, and her gaze expresses her reluctance to disturb him. It's as if she wants to say that she believes his words. The scene shifts to a council meeting where Esteban maintains a confident demeanor, despite the tense atmosphere. His tough demeanor contrasts with his gentleness toward Mabel. The counselors discuss the problems of the southern mines, but he remains calm. They noticed Duke Javier, who had been sent on reconnaissance, returning Esteban with a sly smile. Notes the odd timing of his appearance. His decisiveness once again comes to the fore, demonstrating him as a strong ruler. Duke Javier, a mysterious royalist aristocrat, ponders his actions. No one knows his true intentions. He carefully conceals his actions, keeping those around him guessing about his goals. Meanwhile, Duke Conrad, a cunning politician, is embezzling the profits from the southern mines, but there is no direct evidence of his machinations. Intelligence agents are trying to find evidence against Duke Conrad, but he skillfully manipulates the situation to avoid detection. He does nothing himself, masterfully using others to carry out his dirty deeds. The situation remains tense, forcing Javier to consider new methods of influence. Javier's secret calculations shed light on Duke Conrad's destruction and subjugation of other aristocratic families. Despite his losses, Javier sees an opportunity to change the balance of power. He decides to act, leaving no room for his opponent to continue their games, understanding the importance of his every move. At a council meeting among nobles, the atmosphere grows tense. Hidden suspicions hang in the air. One of the participants, sensing something amiss, notices a worsening mood. Meanwhile, Esteban decisively brings the meeting to an end, making it clear that their differences require a clear and swift resolution. Esteban suddenly falls ill, shocking everyone present. His weakened state causes concern, and his closest aides rush to support him. Clearly, the overload and responsibility of state affairs are beginning to negatively impact his health. Concern for the emperor's well-being is growing. His loyal aide wonders if Esteban will be able to cope with such a hectic lifestyle. Meanwhile, Esteban himself admits he lacks peace and recuperation, hinting at the important role of a close associate. Thoughts of Esteban haunt those around him. One of his advisors recognizes how many problems and worries fall on the emperor's shoulders. He sincerely worries about the ruler's health and well-being, knowing that the country cannot afford to lose him at such a crucial moment. In Esteban's office, another conversation about his well-being arises. An aide concerned about the emperor's condition expresses his concern. However, Esteban wearily remarks that his health is discussed too often, as if someone wants him gone, which leads to awkwardness. The advisor persistently reminds the emperor of the importance of proper nutrition and rest. He is concerned that Esteban is skipping meals, which is further aggravating his weakness. Despite his concern, the emperor maintains a serious demeanor, making it clear he has more pressing matters to attend to. Esteban understands that despite his intense responsibilities, he must take care of himself for the future. He is considering how to find a balance between work and rest to continue effectively leading the country. His entourage remains close, ready to support him during this challenging period. Esteban glared at Oscar, who seemed flustered by his stern gaze. Despite the tension in their conversation, Esteban's thoughts were preoccupied with his recent withdrawal from his daughter, which was causing him pain and confusion. Oscar tried to console the emperor, but his gaze was filled with sadness and compassion. Esteban reacted with mixed feelings, knowing the situation affected him personally. Esteban sarcastically remarked that Oscar clearly didn't have enough work to be so free. Oscar cried out in alarm, trying to explain that he had recently accompanied the princess on a walk at her request, which had provoked an unexpected reaction from the emperor. The reminder of Mabel's walk sparked a flash of emotion in Esteban. His gaze grew cold, and he pondered her motives, feeling uneasy. In turn, he wondered what lay behind her actions. When Oscar tried to avoid contact with the emperor, he complained vehemently, but then admitted that he was still concerned for Esteban's safety. His emotions vacillated between fear and concern. Later, Esteban and Oscar met in the garden. The conversation began with a formal greeting, but Esteban soon noticed that Mabel's hair had grown slightly. This small detail evoked fond memories. Esteban noted with a slight smile that the girl had grown a little. Oscar cautiously invited him to come closer and take a closer look. But the emperor remained reserved, reluctant to take the initiative. Looking out over the garden, Esteban admitted he wouldn't mind approaching Mabel, but something inside him held him back. His thoughts deepened, and he was clearly lost in his own emotions. Esteban pondered the reasons for the estrangement between him and Mabel. It pained him to realize he understood nothing, and it filled his heart with a feeling of sadness and loneliness. Mabel, sitting on a bench with another child, seemed calm. She sensed she was being watched, which caused a slight uneasiness. Her intuition sensed Esteban's hidden presence, but he hesitated to approach. Mabel tries to say the word, but the difficulty of pronunciation leads to confusion. Oscar asks again, mocking her efforts, which causes the girl embarrassment and frustration. She mentally worries about when she will learn to speak clearly and confidently. Sitting next to Oscar, Mabel suddenly jumps up, noticing something unexpected. Her reaction is so intense that she exclaims in surprise and excitement, pointing out what has happened. A fluffy cat with beautiful golden fur appears before Mabel. The girl excitedly tries to imitate the sounds the cat makes, but her nervousness makes her meow awkwardly. Oscar laughs, encouraging her. Plucking up her courage, Mabel carefully picks up the cat. Her eyes reflect awe and joy, as if she were holding something precious. The cat, however, suddenly expresses his displeasure with a loud meow. The cat's reaction stuns Mabel. Her thoughts are filled with questions. Where did this furry creature get such boldness, and where is her former attitude? However, fear quickly gives way to a determination to understand this strange behavior. Oscar notices Mabel's confusion and reassures her. He suggests that the girl imagined the cat speaking to her. However, things take a different turn when Mabel realizes her hearing was correct. The cat suddenly catches Mabel's attention, softly speaking as if addressing her. The girl is shocked. She senses this is no ordinary animal at all. Fear and admiration mingle in her mind. Looking into the cat's bright green eyes, Mabel realizes he's genuinely trying to get his point across. At first, it seems impossible, but the cat's expression is too self-aware to doubt it. Mabel, shaken to the core, can barely contain her emotions. She feels like reality is failing her, and she's about to lose consciousness. She doesn't know how to cope with this strange revelation. Meanwhile, the cat, leaving the girl lost in thought, proudly shows her a piece of meat, as if offering it as a treat. But Mabel, losing her patience, playfully reproaches him and orders him to try it himself, which elicits a chuckle from Oscar, who is watching the scene. A small ginger cat, looking disgruntled, declares that he's not a cat at all, but a holy lion sent to protect the little girl Mabel. He's indignant at being mistaken for a mere animal and reminds her that he doesn't need cat food. The lion explains that his appearance is deceiving. Despite looking like a cat, he demands human treats. Mabel recalls how this mythical beast shared her birthday. The holy lion explains that his mission is to protect Mabel. Although the girl doubts his holiness, the lion warns that he hears her every thought, demanding greater respect. One of the maids jokes that the mythical lion actually looks cute, even though he acts like a real maniac. Mabel doesn't understand why her protector is so arrogant. Mabel's walk ends abruptly when her female companions announce she needs to return to try on new dresses. Leo, left hungry, is indignant at being abandoned. Mabel leaves with her companions, reluctant to leave Lev, but they persuade her to hurry. Lev is left alone, disgruntled, grumbling about his empty bowl. Mabel spots a man she hasn't seen in a long time. It's Esteban, the young emperor, whom she hasn't seen in a long time. The girl recalls hearing about Esteban's recent fainting spell at a meeting. She's genuinely concerned about his health and asks how he's feeling. Esteban, however, passes by without paying her any attention. His silence leaves Mabel surprised and bitter. The girl resentfully wonders why the emperor ignored her, feeling worried and bewildered by his cold attitude. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and bright blue eyes, reflects on her childhood. She considered herself strange, tried not to cry, and tried not to attract attention. She understands that parents don't like strange children, so she suppressed her emotions. Esteban, the young emperor, watches Mabel with restraint. He notes that the girl is doing well and is quietly happy for her, but at the same time, he resists the urge to express his feelings. Esteban's internal conflict intensifies. He realizes he wants to hug Mabel, but he understands she's not yet ready for such intimacy. He restrains himself so as not to violate her boundaries. Esteban turns to his current duties, particularly preparations for Mabel's upcoming coronation. He heads toward the majestic palace, contemplating her future as heir. Time passes, and a special bond forms between them. A month has passed since their meeting, and now their relationship is filled with warmth. Mabel gradually begins to feel more comfortable around him. Mabel lies in her room filled with comfort and flowers. She finally feels safe, as if her night of loneliness has given way to a long-awaited dawn. The day of the ceremony arrives, the majestic hall fills with light, and Mabel prepares for the important event. Her name is called, and the atmosphere around her grows solemn and tense. A commotion erupts in the hall, and Esteban steps forward. His appearance is awe-inspiring. He looks majestic and confident, ready to fulfill his duties to the country. Esteban turns and meets Mabel's gaze. He smiles warmly at her, and in that moment she realizes she's missed him. Their connection becomes more evident despite its reticence. Mabel acknowledges her emotions and wonders why she's so happy. She feels her heart warmer and realizes that over the past month, she's grown closer to Esteban. Esteban sits in his luxurious chambers, dressed in formal attire, preparing for an important event. Mabel awakens, realizing she's not in her room. She's puzzled by the unusual opulent surroundings. The girl remembers falling asleep in her room, but now she's in a completely different place. She's surprised to see the festive atmosphere and the crowd of people around hers. Mabel is confused by what's happening. She notices everyone's attention is on her, which further intensifies her panic. She begins to realize she's in the middle of something very important. Esteban announces the succession proceedings. Mabel's gaze freezes in surprise when he pronounces her name. The girl realizes she has become a key figure in this event. A crown appears before Mabel, and they prepare to place it on her. At that moment, it dawns on her that this is a coronation ceremony. She is stunned and confused as to how she ended up in this situation. Horrified, she refuses the new role, loudly declaring that she doesn't want to become empress. Her emotional protest fills the room with tension. She starts running, feeling unprepared for such responsibility. Her panic reaches its peak as she flees the entire situation, like a small child in the wrong place. The crown falls with a loud thud. Everyone's eyes turn to Mabel, who freezes, realizing her actions have shocked everyone present. Suddenly, jumping up, she pushes the crown away from her, declaring that she no longer wants to see it. Her gesture symbolizes her inner despair and desire to escape the pressure. Esteban, watching Mabel, reacts with some disappointment, but restrained. The others present look stunned by her actions, and the girl herself feels even more reluctance to live up to expectations. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and blue eyes, stares at the man in front of her in surprise, wondering what's going on. Meanwhile, Esteban, standing in front of her, begins clapping his hands with a slight smile, as if expressing approval. Mabel, confused, tries to comprehend the strange act she's just committed. The crowd watching Mabel speaks admiringly of her actions. They discuss her determination and praise her as a future leader, noting her clear expression and energy. The atmosphere is filled with approval and amazement, and the people are confident that she will become an outstanding ruler. Esteban, watching the scene unfold, expresses pride in his daughter, mentioning her remarkable qualities. Mabel is confused, unable to understand how her actions have caused such a storm of emotion. Her surprise only intensifies when she sees everyone's attention focused on her. Esteban, demonstrating his intentions, places the crown before Mabel. The girl looks at it in surprise, unsure how to react to this symbol of power. Her thoughts are filled with bewilderment, as she never imagined she could receive such recognition. Esteban declares that the old must go, symbolizing his rejection of the old crown, which he sets aside. For Mabel, this is the moment when she realizes she must embark on a new path, one that brings change and responsibility for the future. The empire celebrates the ascension of a new empress. At the ceremony, little Mabel, wearing a crown, looks confused, wondering how she came to be ruler. The atmosphere is filled with solemnity, but the child's face reflects genuine shock. The audience in the hall greets the empress with admiration. However, Gustav, observing Mabel, understands her inner confusion. Recognizing the gravity of her new status, he is ready to support her despite her young age. The temple where the coronation is taking place glitters with gold and grandeur. However, Mabel's mind is filled with only one thought. There is no hope. The realization of responsibility fills her with fear, which she cannot hide behind her crown. After the ceremony, Mabel's memories flash back to her first birthday. It was then that she heard that the country was doomed. These words, spoken about her future, left a deep imprint on her soul. She is transferred to a new room, luxurious and spacious but alien. The girl longs for the comfort of her former home. She feels isolated in the vast palace, which seems to emphasize her loneliness. Gustav, the new aide appointed by the previous emperor, appears before her. He greets her, assuring her that he will support her with all his might, because his family considers serving the emperor their highest honor. Gustav vows to always be by her side, but his enthusiasm only provokes protest from Mabel. She wants to regain her freedom and escape the responsibility that it seems no one asked her if she was ready to accept. However, Gustav stands firm. He declares that Mabel can rest today, but tomorrow he will resume his duties. His confidence leaves no room for refusal. Gustav, in a cheerful and light-hearted mood, reminds her that tomorrow her day will begin with a meeting. He looks happy and determined to begin her training. Mabel doesn't share his enthusiasm. Mabel can't understand how anyone can delegate work to a child. Her thoughts are filled with protest. Why should she have to sit through meetings? Her discontent leads to the comical yet desperate realization that the road ahead is difficult. Little Mabel, dressed in an elegant gown, sat on a throne surrounded by the palace's luxurious furnishings. She looked at the woman bowing before her, who had invited her to come out and play. The girl frowned in displeasure, her childish face expressing weariness from responsibilities unbecoming her age. She barely understood what was happening, but she already felt the burden of power. As the woman removed her gloves, Mabel's mind seethed. Her indignation grew. How could she govern a country when even simple things like removing clothes were so difficult? Her anger found vent in a scream accompanied by excessive gesticulation. It was truly stressful for a child who had found herself at the pinnacle of power at such a young age. Mabel was certain the country was under threat. Her thoughts grew increasingly dark as she imagined everything around her crumbling and disintegrating. It seemed to her that the inevitable destruction of this world was only a matter of time. Deciding to take her fate into her own hands, she vowed to change everything despite her childish weaknesses. Sitting on the throne, Mabel wondered if she could withstand this test. Her small hands clutched the toy nervously as she imagined her path to ruin. For the first time, she realized that her only dream now was to be overthrown. This thought strangely filled her with confidence, for it seemed more achievable than becoming the perfect ruler. Servants and advisors nervously watched the clocks, awaiting the appointed time. Their conversations reflected their anxiety. Time seemed frozen, and everyone felt the wait drag on forever. Somewhere off to the side, a group of children played with toys, while the adults discussed the future of the kingdom, trying not to look toward the throne room. One of the courtiers expressed concern that Her Majesty was away from important meetings. Meanwhile, the Marquis, a blond man with a mustache, noted with pleasure that he would now be able to spend more time with Mabel. A smug smile lit his face as this situation played to his advantage. Javier, a man with vibrant red hair, entered the hall. His confident gait and elegant suit commanded respect. He looked happy and self-assured. The Marquis greeted him reservedly, but their gazes betrayed a hidden tension, as if their smiles concealed true intentions. Javier gave a brief report on his reconnaissance in the south, confirming that everything had gone smoothly, but he emphasized that many interesting events had occurred during his absence. His enigmatic smile and calm tone piqued the interest of those around him, hinting that changes had already begun in the palace. After the Empress's death, rumors of the young princess's extraordinary nature rocked the court. Many expected something extraordinary from her, but in the end, Mabel turned out to be just a one-year-old child. However, her father, who loved his daughter immensely, insisted that the throne pass to her. This decision caused mixed feelings among the courtiers. The picture was completed by a crown slightly too large for her head, symbolizing her unsuitable status. Despite the obvious difficulties, no one dared to challenge the emperor's will. Mabel, looking at the adults around her, began to realize that her fate had already been predetermined, and now everything depended on her own actions. The mustachioed Marquis and Duke Javier discuss recent events, mockingly emphasizing their confidence in their superiority, despite the unexpected circumstances. they await their new ruler's ability to prove herself in matters of state. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, finds herself at the center of their discussion, demonstrating her prettiness yet hidden strength. The arrival of His Imperial Majesty is announced. Tension rises when the door opens. A young man appears, his appearance evoking admiration and respect. His presence disrupts the usual flow of events, hinting at changes to come. Mabel's presence captivates everyone gathered. She appears innocent and touching, yet her gaze is filled with curiosity and hidden wisdom. People comment on how charming she is up close, highlighting the contrast between her outward vulnerability and her inner strength. Esteban, the former emperor, suddenly appears in the hall, holding Mabel in his arms. His appearance is a shock, and his icy gaze reminds everyone of his former power. He demands that those present show due respect to their new ruler, hinting at the seriousness of the moment. Everyone at the meeting is taken aback by Esteban's unexpected appearance. They struggle to cope with the sudden change of events, noting that his participation was unplanned. The mood in the room grows tense as he announces the start of a discussion of important matters. Mabel finds herself at the center of the meeting, sitting on Esteban's lap. She feels uneasy, aware that her presence is causing so much commotion. Meanwhile, the important topic of aid in one of the remote provinces is being discussed. The mysterious Devlin Devil reappears on the border. His actions are alarming, but this time he behaves differently. The threat posed by this mysterious figure and the possible consequences of his return are discussed. Recalling how the devil once saved Mabel, appearing in the midst of chaos, makes one wonder if hiding him in the past was the right decision. This connection between the girl and the mysterious savior reveals a new layer to her story. Despite the growing danger, Mabel realizes she can't ignore her knowledge of what's happening. Meanwhile, another divorce petition involving Viscount Vincent is brought up for debate, adding to the drama. It turns out that Viscount Vincent has made similar statements several times, before each time causing a scandal. His actions spark outrage in the hall, and everyone is discussing his behavior. The meeting reaches a peak in tension, preparing for new turns in the Empire's fate. Esteban holds little Mabel on his lap, perplexed as to how he came to have her. Soon he loudly expresses his surprise, calling the girl illegitimate. However, this news shocks everyone. It turns out that Mabel's mother is the Viscount's wife, who died tragically under mysterious circumstances while pregnant. This situation raises many questions and tension in the room. The story reveals the tragedy's past. The woman lived in an outbuilding where the staircase suddenly collapsed. As a result of the fall, she lost her child. But the accusations against the Viscount seem unfair. The Viscount claims he sent her there for safety. However, this excuse breeds mistrust among those around her, leaving a sense of hidden intrigue and betrayal. The death of the Viscount's wife left him without heirs. He soon announced that he would pass on his family name to the child he had with his mistress. This news provoked outrage, especially in Mabel, who despite her young age was beginning to show decisiveness. Her outrage grew into furious anger, terrifying those around her. Mabel slams her fist on the table and demands justice. Her cries of demanding justice put everyone in the room on edge. Esteban is surprised that such a young girl can express such strong emotions, but he remains composed, observing her indomitable determination to restore order. Her loud words attract the attention of those around her. Others, confused by the child's cries, begin to ask what she means. At this point, Mabel loudly repeats that the culprit must be punished. Her genuine anger makes the situation simultaneously serious and comical as the adults, perplexed, try to figure out how to respond. Mabel's repeated demands evoke mixed emotions among the adults. People begin to whisper, wondering how best to calm the girl. But her persistence wins out. Even the sternest faces in the room break under the strain and begin to laugh. Emotions reach a fever pitch, turning the atmosphere in the room slightly absurd. One of the courtiers at the table breaks down and bursts out laughing. His infectious laughter causes those around him to laugh even louder. Mabel is surprised by this reaction. Her decisiveness should have frightened everyone, but instead it is greeted with good-natured humor. The Marquis, too, can't hide his laughter. He clutches his heart as if trying to suppress his mirth, and declares that he simply can't bear the moment. Esteban, watching this, feels a slight sense of confusion, but remains serious, holding the girl who is perplexed by what's happening around her. Mabel looks at the laughing adults with obvious irritation. She doesn't understand why her words are perceived as a joke. Her large blue eyes fill with indignation, and her lips press into a firm line. For her, this isn't a game, but a matter of honor and justice. The tension gives way to a final comical denouement. Mabel loudly declares that the situation is no laughing matter. Her childish determination simultaneously evokes respect and affection in the adults, but her seriousness fails to stem the laughter, leaving Esteban bewildered and the audience genuinely admiring her courage. Little Mabel is indignantly aware that her edict was taken as a joke. Lying on her stomach, she demonstrates her indignation by staring at the juicy strawberries. Her young age clearly doesn't stop her from showing her temper. Taking advantage of the situation, the employees cleverly persuade the little girl to stamp an important document. Their true intentions are revealed when they giggle, as she confidently complies with their request, unaware of the consequences. Despite her best efforts, Mabel is aware of her vulnerability. Her only weapon is pounding the floor with her fists, demonstrating all her rage. She is convinced that one day she will be dethroned, and this thought seems inevitable. A blond boy with a mischievous smile appears, greeting Mabel. She is struck by his appearance and begins to imagine what he will become in the future. Her childish curiosity clearly gets the better of her. Suddenly, her attention shifts to the white-haired boy, Oscar. He sternly reprimands his friend for frightening Mabel. The situation becomes more serious, and Mabel finds herself the center of their attention. The blonde, slightly embarrassed, apologizes to Mabel for frightening her. Oscar, in turn, picks Mabel up as if protecting her from everyone around him. The emotions are tense, but sincerity is evident in every gesture. Mabel is stunned to learn that the blonde boy's name is Oscar. Her perception is upended as she sees him in this light for the first time. The situation gives her pause. Oscar discreetly asks his friend to be quiet. Avoiding further explanation, Mabel learns that the boys are her fencing classmates, which adds a new twist to the situation. Mabel finds herself face to face with a boy who introduces himself as Enrique Javier. His friendly gaze and gentle words inspire confidence in her, despite her childish wariness. Oscar intervenes abruptly, reminding Enrique of the rules of etiquette. Enrique, realizing his mistake, apologizes to Mabel, admitting that her presence unsettled him. The scene ends with a touch of tension, reflecting the unique dynamic of the characters. Mabel, a pink-haired girl, watched the scene unfold with slight confusion. Her attempt to help had ended awkwardly, causing mixed feelings among those nearby. Prince Oscar looked embarrassed, his eyes shining with embarrassment. He clearly felt guilty about something and tried to justify it, begging Mabel's forgiveness, who looked at him with surprise. The prince, nervous, extended his hand to Mabel, begging for forgiveness. Her gaze softened, and she stepped closer. Their conversation became charged with emotion as the girl touched his head as if consoling. The gesture evoked an inner thrill within the prince. He froze, feeling the warmth, and realized that this moment meant more to him than he could have imagined. The Marquis, observing the situation from a distance, decided to intervene. His voice was stern, but there was a hint of concern in it. He called the girl by her title, showing respect. Mabel, restraining her emotions, looked at him and spoke words that the prince took as mercy. Her forgiveness brought him relief, and this lent an air of lightness and sincerity to the moment. Oscar, stunned, looked at Mabel, feeling a little slighted by her attention. His indignation welled up. He wanted her to show him the same warmth. The girl was surprised by his demand, but her sincerity and innocence helped maintain an atmosphere of friendship. His words sounded like a plea for acceptance. Mabel, standing between the two boys, appeared confident, but inside she was filled with mixed emotions. The situation with the children left her internally confused, but her kindness helped smooth over the rough patches. They looked at her with hope, and her understanding helped create an aura of calm and support around her. The atmosphere changed when a mysterious hooded demon entered the scene. His figure oozed darkness, his face filled with hidden menace. He watched the proceedings with cold indifference, as if waiting for the right moment to intervene. His words were laced with mystery, creating a sense of impending danger. The demon addressed the unknown knight, reminding him of his oath and commands. His words were full of sarcasm and mockery, and his orders sounded like a sentence. He made it clear that nothing could destroy his power. The image of the demon and the blood on the sword created a tense and dramatic contrast to the previous scenes. The demon's gaze fell on someone sitting before him. This man seemed broken, lost in his own dark thoughts. The demon seemed to feed on his despair, making him understand that escaping this darkness would be impossible. His figure was surrounded by magic, heightening the feeling of inexorable pressure on the one standing before him. In the silence of the room, the man with the dark gaze realized the full depth of his situation. His thoughts revolved around the desire to find a way to free himself from slavery. The life that had given him an immortal body had become an endless struggle for the meaning of existence. A spark of determination appeared in his eyes. Despite the darkness that surrounded him, he realized that Mabel could be the key to fulfilling his wish. Her strength and sincerity inspired hope that she could change his fate. His red eyes glistened with a mixture of despair and hope. In that moment, he decided to act, believing that the girl could fulfill his deepest desire. Gustav, the new assistant, respectfully introduced himself to Mabel, the young empress. He seemed sincere and tried to convey that his concern for the girl was genuine. The surroundings were majestic but austere, and little Mabel, not yet accustomed to such conditions, merely observed, remaining silent and slightly confused. Mabel looked around wearily, her expression indifferent to everything that was happening. She was asked if she liked the food, to which she quietly agreed. A slight sadness was evident in her gaze, as if she were merely submitting to someone else's will rather than expressing her true desires. Gustav enthusiastically praised Mabel for her choice and rejoiced at her satisfaction. He suggested they attend the meeting where her new responsibilities awaited her. The girl, silently accepting his words, nodded, as if realizing she could no longer refuse the path offered to her. When Gustav decided to pick her up to carry her to the meeting, Mabel began to protest. Her eyes filled with tears, and her face expressed hurt. She showed that she didn't want to follow him. Her protest seemed like an attempt to preserve at least a modicum of her freedom. Mabel reflected on the 4 months that had flown by since her coronation. Her life had changed completely, and she had become more reserved and mature than her age would have allowed. She had become accustomed to high-quality food and a new role, but childhood was far behind her. Recalling the first days of her reign, Mabel realized that people admired her abilities and eloquence. This amazement gave way to respect, and the girl realized that her words had power. She accepted this as her new reality and even found some positive aspects in it. Her reflections led to a painful realization. Mabel realized that her position on the throne was no accident. Someone had wanted to exploit her, calling her a divine gift, but she had become a tool in their hands. This knowledge left her feeling vulnerable and afraid. Mabel's memory flashed to Esteban, the former emperor, who had abandoned the throne for her. He had done so to protect the girl and prevent others from controlling her destiny. This act surprised her and simultaneously filled her with gratitude, but it also raised many questions. She couldn't understand why Esteban had given up power for her. These thoughts haunted her, for his actions held a deep meaning she couldn't yet comprehend. His actions seemed both mysterious and touching to her. Despite her aloofness, Esteban continued to be kind and caring. He invited Mabel to accompany him to the meeting. She detected sincerity and concern in his words. This moment awakened in her a feeling of warmth and trust that she had sorely lacked. Pink-haired Mabel fumes, pointing out something outrageous. She reminds everyone that she can't be ignored after being dethroned. Her emotions convey wounded dignity. She feels insulted and won't easily forgive those who have offended her. Esteban walks next to a man holding Mabel. He asks a tense question about why the man is so close to his daughter. The man calmly replies, trying to keep him calm. Esteban is clearly jealous and doesn't hide it, creating a tense atmosphere between them. During the official meeting, the mustachioed marquis expresses his joy that the emperor is in good health. The atmosphere seems formal but tense. Meanwhile, Mabel sits in her chair, her hair pulled back into 2 ponytails. She doesn't hide her irritation at the situation, watching the proceedings with skepticism. Mabel notices someone complimenting her appearance, which leaves her flustered. She blushes, embarrassed, and then angrily demands that they stop saying such things to her. This brings smiles to the faces of those present, who can't hide their amusement at her reaction. A discussion of important matters begins in the hall. Esteban is clearly preoccupied with the matter of Count Sickville. The atmosphere in the room becomes serious as the implications of that name are discussed. Mabel watches the situation warily, remaining silent. The red-haired Duke Javier offers his solution to the problem, mentioning that the best solution would be to win the Count's hand. His confident expression emphasizes his intention to insist on his own way. His proposal evokes obvious confusion among those present, but no one dares openly object. When someone dares to hint at disagreement with Javier's proposal, he asks with a slight smirk if they're okay with his decision. Under pressure, his interlocutors quickly drop their objections, bowing to his authority and charisma. The Marquise tries to justify the Count, claiming he merely used the money for his own needs and that it cannot be considered a crime. His voice sounds confident, but the look on Esteban's face and the others suggests they will not so easily turn a blind eye to such behavior. In the courtroom, Duke Javier innocently declares there is no evidence against him. Mabel looks at him with indignation, silently calling him a hypocrite. Her thoughts revolve around how much money he could have made for such outrageous behavior. The girl recalls how Javier always uses his charm and influence to sway decisions in his favor. His smile demeanor and the weight of gold on the scales suggest that truth in this world is subordinated to the power of money. Mabel ponders how a man like Javier could have a son like Enrique's the boy, often interacts kindly with others, especially Oscar. His innocence and kind heart stand in stark contrast to his father's actions. Mabel looks at Enrique, reflecting that he's just a child, and that the reason for his father's greed lies in the magical stones. The girl concludes that these rare minerals and their influence are the cause of all the current problems. Magic stones are a rare and valuable resource, formed from mana. Their production is extremely limited, and their price is incredibly high. These minerals play a key role in the magical world, which only increases their value. Duke Javier recently gained access to a mine with a large supply of magical stones. But production is limited, and demand for the stones is growing. This makes them virtually inaccessible to ordinary people, while Javier himself grows ever richer. The nobility has long known about the mining of magical stones, but only the Marquis dares to object to the Duke's actions. He, like Javier, has his own interests related to the magical minerals, which gives rise to conflict. Mabel hears rumors that the imperial family has large reserves of stones, but they too are not guaranteed to last forever. A triumphant smile plays across Javier's face, certain that even the imperial family will one day need his resources. Mabel, frowning, decides she must try to do something. Her determined gaze suggests she's not going to stand by and wants to take action to stop this injustice. Later that night, Mabel awakens to strange conversations. She feels uneasy even in the safety of the imperial palace. Her determination and desire to understand what is happening only grow stronger despite her fears. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and large blue eyes, wakes up in the middle of the night in her cozy but empty house. She hears strange sounds and wonders who could be nearby. Rising from her bed, she begins to explore the house cautiously, listening for every rustle which fills her with curiosity and a slight sense of unease. Mabel notices movement outside the window and approaches. There, she sees two large owls conversing with each other. The girl realizes she understands their speech, and her surprise turns to delight. However, the owls, dissatisfied with the lack of food, fly off in search of food, leaving Mabel to watch them pensively. The next morning, Mabel goes outside and sees a ginger cat loudly complaining in the garden. Trying to calm him down, she realizes she can not only hear him, but also communicate with him. This new gift confuses her, but she begins to realize it's a special ability. Gradually, the girl comes to the realization that her unusual abilities are beginning to awaken. She feels something shift within her, as if some magic is awakening, connecting her with the animal world around her. This moment brings her both delight and questions about the origin of her gift. The cat tells her that this isn't just a coincidence. He hints at some divine will that chose her for this mission. He promises that with time, she will understand the meaning of what's happening and learn to use her gift for the greater good. Mabel wonders why she was chosen. The cat's answer surprises her. God chose her for unknown reasons, but these reasons will surely be revealed to her in the future. Mabel senses a mystical meaning in this. The cat adds that he, as a divine lion, was sent to protect and assist her. He emphasizes the importance of her mission and assures her that she can learn to communicate with any living being if she unlocks her potential. Although she's only a few years old, the cat assures her that her soul is much older than it appears. He explains that many answers to her questions are yet to come, but it's all part of a greater plan. Mabel listens to his words with growing interest. Having plucked up her courage, the girl decides to try using her powers consciously. She prepares to take the first step in mastering her gift, filled with hope and determination to discover what fate has in store for her. This moment becomes a symbol of a new beginning for her. Mabel completes her preparations and, armed with her childish energy, decides to take action. She senses many challenges ahead, but her faith in herself and the support of the mystical lion give her the strength to step into the unknown. Gustav was immersed in his work, trying to sort through the piles of documents piling up on his desk. He let out a tired sigh, realizing he was running low on magic stones. While the imperial family still had reserves, he knew they would soon run out. This thought was alarming, as without resources, the balance of power could shift against them. Gustav pondered his next move. He was concerned about Duke Javier's growing strength, which could exploit this crisis. His dark thoughts grew, but suddenly a voice broke the silence of the office, bringing him back to reality. Gustav became wary, but couldn't even guess who had visited him. Mabel burst into the office with a beaming smile and a bouquet of bright flowers. Her energetic appearance instantly broke the oppressive atmosphere of the room. She approached Gustav, declaring she had come to help. His surprise gave way to mild confusion, as he was accustomed to working alone. Mabel confidently took over his office, declaring it her territory. Now Gustav, though he doubted her capacity for order, couldn't resist her sincere enthusiasm. The girl began enthusiastically sorting through papers, looking both charming and chaotic. In a fit of enthusiasm, Mabel accidentally dropped several piles of documents. Gustav offered to clean it up himself, but she refused, claiming she could handle it. He watched her efforts with a slight smile, though his inner voice insisted that such a tidy arrangement could lead to disaster. While examining the contents of the desk, Mabel stumbled upon an inkwell. Her curiosity overcame her common sense, and she opened it, unaware of the consequences. Gustav only managed to notice it out of the corner of his eye, before ink spilled onto the desk, drenching important papers. Mabel didn't understand at first, but quickly realized what she'd done. She tried to explain that she hadn't expected it to end like this. Gustav, seeing her remorse, contained his displeasure and hurried to find something to clear his documents, though his heart sank with worry. When Gustav left to get a rag, Mabel apologized to him in her thoughts. Her sincerity was reflected in her eyes, but she decided not to waste time. She knew she had a chance to accomplish her plan while her assistant was busy. Alone, Mabel began to hurriedly shuffle through the papers. Her resolve grew stronger, knowing she had little time. Her thoughtfulness gave way to concentration, and in these moments she seemed almost older than she actually was. Determined to finish her business before Gustav's return, Mabel remained confident. She clutched her bag in her hands and repeated to herself that she had to make it in time. Her blue eyes sparkled with determination, and her image, full of the contrast between childish naivety and inner strength, remained inimitable. Mabel finished writing an important document concerning the purchase of the Southwest Mine. Her diligence over the past months was evident in this work. Although her handwriting still left much to be desired, she was pleased with the result. Her hands felt weak from the effort, but pride in the task accomplished filled her. The girl lifted the document with difficulty, feeling its weight not only physically, but also emotionally, as each line represented hours of labor. She knew she now had to complete the work and affix the imperial seal. This thought simultaneously inspired and worried her. When Mabel finally picked up the heavy seal, her small hands were barely able to handle it. She tried to do everything carefully, but worry and fatigue were taking their toll. At that moment, the girl felt the magnitude of the responsibility placed upon her. The seal was affixed, and its imprint shone on the paper, symbolizing the work's completion. But the joy was short-lived. She was suddenly distracted by a voice behind her. It turned out that Esteban had entered the office, his appearance catching Mabel off guard. Esteban looked at the girl with interest, trying to understand what had brought her here. His gaze slid over the documents and the seal, then returned to Mabel. He couldn't hide his surprise at her efforts, though it unexpectedly touched his heart. Mabel tried to explain her actions, but suddenly mentioned Gustav. The man's name caused a change in Esteban's mood. His gaze became stern and cold, as he clearly began to ponder something important about the reference. Esteban considered what to do with Gustav. He felt he'd failed him, and now he was contemplating punishment. His face expressed anger and firm determination, and the atmosphere around him grew tense. He couldn't tolerate any mistakes from his subordinates. At that moment, a servant appeared with a large doll intended for Mabel. Seeing the gift, the girl smiled and immediately forgot all her worries. For her, this gift was an unexpected sign of care, something she had been sorely lacking lately. Mabel joyfully hugged the doll, expressing her gratitude to the servant. Her happiness seemed genuine and contagious. However, Esteban, who was watching the proceedings, maintained a stern expression, carefully monitoring every movement of those around him. Esteban sternly questioned the servant, reproaching him for leaving Mabel unattended. The girl, realizing that the servant could have suffered because of her, tried to intercede for him. Her sincerity softened Esteban, and he decided not to punish the servant, but hinted that such situations should not be repeated. Mabel, clutching a huge stuffed rabbit, tries to please her strict father. She's inwardly indignant that he's taken this on again, as his whims always create difficult situations. Nevertheless, she decides to act. Talking about a gift for the former emperor, Esteban, the girl hands him the rabbit, hoping it will melt his cold heart. Esteban looks puzzled, clearly not expecting such a gesture. The rabbit in his hands seems touching and unusual to him, as this is the first time Mabel has ever given him something from the heart. He looks at the gift and freezes, struck by her sincerity. His gaze gleams not only with surprise, but also with deep inner contemplation. While Esteban processes what just happened, Mabel decides to create a distraction and escape unnoticed. She grabs her assistant Xavi by the hand and pulls him along. Her mind races with plans for her escape, while her father is lost in his thoughts. She's happy that her little ruse worked, and they managed to escape, leaving Esteban alone with his feelings. Meanwhile, Esteban finds a strange package in his hands. He opens it and notices a sealed letter, which piques his curiosity. He examines the document, trying to figure out what this important message is. Various guesses flash through his mind, but it's not yet clear what lies behind this mysterious message. After carefully examining the letter, he realizes it's a deal to purchase the southwestern Logul mine. It immediately becomes clear to him that this purchase seems odd. The mine is known only for its low-quality iron, which is hardly valuable. Esteban suspects there may be more to this than just a business deal. Esteban's doubts deepen when he recalls that magical stones were found near the mine. This discovery makes him wonder about the hidden agendas of those who orchestrated this deal. He is haunted by the idea that the mine contains not only iron deposits, but also far more valuable resources capable of changing the balance of power. Meanwhile, the mine workers discuss the oddity of the imperial decree to mine Logul. They point out that the mine is known only for its cheap iron, which the royal family hardly needs. However forced to follow the order, they continue mining to avoid breaking the law. Suddenly, one of the miners notices something glittering deep within the shaft. Approaching closer, they realize they've stumbled upon magical stones. The discovery's significance astounds them, and the miners realize their mine could now become the center of new intrigues and great events. At the same time, a mole appears on the surface, seemingly trying to attract people's attention to the newly discovered treasure. The animal emerges from the ground, spitting out tiny but dazzlingly shining stones. The miners exchange delighted glances, realizing they have witnessed an important discovery that will change everything. Esteban, holding the mine document in his hands, begins to piece together the puzzle. His suspicions are confirmed, and he realizes that someone is exploiting Logul for the magical stones. A feeling of unease within him makes him wonder about who is behind this deal and what role he will play in solving this mystery. Mabel, with a tender expression on her face, thanks Clot, sitting on the grass in a flowery dress. Her blue eyes sparkle with joy as she looks at the small, shiny stones he handed her. These stones are truly precious to her hard-won treasures, which gives the moment even more emotional significance. With a sincere smile, the girl offers to keep the promise made to this land, for it has now become theirs. She happily digs in the earth, realizing the importance of every moment. Thoughts flicker through her mind about how Gustav must have fulfilled his task, just as she had predicted. Mabel rejoices, thinking that her new ability has proven far more useful than she could have imagined. Anticipation lights her gaze, and an image of an enemy who can no longer triumph appears in her mind. She dreams of the moment when his smug smile disappears from his face, and this fills her with determination. The morning brings a pleasant surprise. The maid delightedly notices that Mabel is already awake. The girl looks lively and full of energy. The maid admires her good mood, and Mabel herself genuinely enjoys the moment, gaining confidence before the big day. Council day approaches, and Mabel is full of enthusiasm. She dresses up in a charming dress, adorned with flowers, and dances down the hallway as if the festivities have already begun. Images of her opponent's face flicker through her mind, further fueling her excitement. The excitement is mounting, and Mabel silently exclaims that she can't wait for it to begin. She hurries to grab a bite to eat before the meeting, pondering her next steps. Along the way, she's confident that everything is working out in her favor, and the coming day will bring her new successes. A familiar voice suddenly calls out to her on the terrace. Mabel stops surprised, and her heart skips a beat. She sees the figure of a boy appear before her, and it fills her with immediate anxiety. Her gaze expresses both fear and curiosity. Enlik appears before her, smiling, as he explains his presence. His warm tone calms Mabel slightly, and she tries to understand his intentions. He says he wanted to see her, knowing that the council is today, and the girl, still wary, reacts with restraint. Mabel begins to reflect on Enlik's words, simultaneously recalling her previous plans. She realizes how her thoughts intersect with the vivid images she'd just imagined. Her surprise mingles with a growing sense of guilt for her bold dreams. Seeing Enlik's face, Mabel suddenly realizes how much emotion lies behind his words. She offers him something sweet to share with her, hoping to distract him from his thoughts. Doubt creeps into her heart, but she tries to focus on the moment that can bring her peace. Mabel, with pink hair and sparkling eyes, enjoys her meal in the garden. She's surprised by how small her portion is, but consoles herself with the thought that when she's older, she'll be able to eat as much as she wants. Her enthusiasm and determination in the face of such a small portion create a light and warm atmosphere. After the meal, Mabel happily declares that everything was delicious. Her genuine delight brings a smile to her companion, Enrique. But suddenly, she notices that his plate remains untouched and offers to share her food. Enrique smiles softly and explains that he already ate before coming here, so he's not at all hungry. His kindness and attention to Mabel create an atmosphere of care and warmth. Mabel, however, notices something strange on his face. The little girl stares at Enrique, noticing a strange mark. She wonders what it could be, and her face expresses concern. It seems her intuition tells her that something is wrong with him. Enrique tries to explain that it's just a mosquito bite. He tries to maintain a light and carefree tone, but his explanations sound unconvincing. Mabel looks at him suspiciously, still lost in thought, repeating the word gnat. Enrique tries to convince Mabel of his theory. He even starts playing with her hat to distract her. Mabel still can't shake the feeling that something is wrong with him. Her thoughts transport her to a disturbing memory. She feels the mark on Enrique's face looks more like a blow than an insect bite. Her inner voice doubts his words, creating tension in her thoughts. Despite her doubts, Mabel tries to hope she's wrong, but her heart is troubled, especially after Enrique steers the conversation to a more innocuous topic, pointing to a bird to distract her. Meanwhile, the fate of Count Sikilma, who embezzled public funds, is being discussed in the courtroom. Opinions are divided, but the majority insists on a harsh punishment. The atmosphere becomes serious and tense, and the anticipation of the decision is palpable. Duke Javier, dressed in sumptuous robes, supports the majority's opinion. His confidence and determination resonate with those present. Meanwhile, Mabel rejoices in the distance, relieved that the difficult decision has finally been made. Javier appears before Mabel, his head bowed modestly. The pink-haired girl notices his submissive appearance and ponders his unexpected reaction. Surprise shines in her eyes, and questions linger in her thoughts about what could have made such a strong man look so unusual. Javier suddenly smiles further, confusing Mabel. She wonders why his inner state, conditioned by the magical stones, should fuel his anger, while he, on the contrary, displays calm and gentleness. This awakens in her a desire to understand his true intentions. Documents bearing seals appear on the table, raising suspicion. Esteban, the former emperor, demands an explanation from Gustav, hinting that the contents of these papers may be connected to a mine he knew nothing about. Tension hangs in the air, and the truth seems hidden. Esteban expresses surprise, declaring he knows nothing about the mine. Gustavo speculates that it may be the work of nobles dissatisfied with Duke Javier's authority. This idea arouses suspicion, but it seems to be only part of a more complex conspiracy. Esteban analyzes the situation and says it's impossible to confirm or deny this version. His cold gaze betrays concern. He notes that the document was approved without his knowledge, heightening suspicions and hinting at possible betrayal within their circle. The document apparently was signed by someone's assistant. Esteban lifts the sheet with irritation and sees illegible handwriting. He expresses dissatisfaction, but admits it's well written, which further alarms him and suggests a well-thought-out plan. The possibility that the mine contains magical stones is discussed. Esteban and Gustav ponder the meaning of the notes, trying to understand who might have written them. The name of the Marquis of Gardenia comes to mind, but this theory seems unlikely, as she has no reason to help the imperial family. Magical stones are shown seemingly mesmerizing, but harboring a hidden threat. The conversation gradually reveals that the situation is rooted in a complex political and magical conspiracy, the consequences of which could be unpredictable for all the characters.